never seen a smile so big on my little Lord lady's face until I tell her I'm going fishing all weekend. Pack up all of my bait and I make plans for 7:45, and I swing around, pick up my date for the weekend. Some reason she seems to please when I'm leaving. There's something I'm missing when I'm gone fishing. When I'm gone fishing. When I'm gone fishing.
Good evening, CFNers. Hope everybody is well tonight. Interesting sky out there. If you live in the Ontario area, you're probably dealing with the same stuff that I saw today, which was a lot of smoke. It's hard to believe that we have smog advisories and all this nonsense that's going on. It's horrendous, absolutely horrendous. Who's in the house? Trisha's in the house. How you doing, James? James Shembry's with us. Tony, how you doing? Christina, how you doing, Christina? Sarah's here. Jeremy, how did the jerk pike turn out tonight, buddy? I know you've posted it. Can't wait to see it. Curtis is in the house. Lloyd's in the house. Bill Maftrick's going to be doing a lot of the behind-the-scenes tagging and whatnot. Kevin Lowen's in the house. Bill Allen, yeah, baby. Oh, this is the how. Holy speed. Holy had to speed home, but I made it. No top 10s today. Nice to see you all. Likewise. Well, I'll tell you, it was good, Jeremy. Fantastic. What a show we have. I don't have a ton of announcements simply because we want to make sure that we allocate enough time for our special guest host, Yvonne Brown, who's going to be joining us momentarily with two guests from a nonprofit organization that deals with Lyme disease and the prevention of ticks producing such a disease. They're from Lyme, Ontario. They're going to be joining us and answering a bunch of questions that Yvonne has, as well as you may have. I know that Lyme disease is bad, but to say that I know anything about Lyme disease would be a lie. I literally don't even know how to properly remove ticks from my skin. So I'm going to learn just like you guys are tonight when it comes to how to prevent it, how to remove them, and what are some of the symptoms if, in fact, you do get bit and they find a way to dig into your skin. Smoke is from Northwestern Ontario. I know, Christina, it's terrible. Unbelievable. What's up, Mike? Mike Howard's in the place. Adam Brooks is here. Hi, Scotty. Been a while. It has, buddy. Absolutely has. Looking forward to CFN retreat. Yeah, that is definitely one of our announcements we're going to be making tonight. The CFN Fish-Off prizes are going to be going out tonight. Mike Consul, if there is time, he will be joining me to give us a bit of an update. If not, we will carry on with Yvonne. But all the CFN Fish-Off prizes will start out from Canada Post, our good friends at Canada Post, tomorrow. So you guys and gals should be receiving them very soon. Tomorrow, as I mentioned, Turning Tuesdays will be on with Mike, discussing everything in regards to the CFN Fish-Off. And then Thursday, we have a special guest appearance by our good friend Cameron Tate, Cooking with CFN. Cameron's going to be joining us again, and we will be discussing a new dish that will include walleye, Vietnamese walleye summer rolls. Stay tuned tomorrow, or stay tuned to Thursday at 8 o'clock with Cameron Tate. He's going to be joining us to divulge into what is going to be yet another splendid and delicious dish prepared for our CFN community. I don't believe I have anything more other than, yes, the meet and greet is coming up on July 30th. Fishing Fanatic Charters and my good friend Michelle and Adam have been spearheading this. Michelle definitely, because she's just a wee bit excited. Not 100% excited, but just a wee bit excited. She's been putting some great little prize packs together for all you CFNers that have booked on. So I look forward to seeing you all July 30th down in Well, I'm hoping it's going to be Port Colborne because that's tentatively where it is booked, but we will let all of our anglers know soon enough. But that's July 30th, which is the Friday, and it's coming up. So you're going to get fed nice little fish fry, courtesy of Bait to Go Outdoor Flavors. And as I said, a loot bag that is a whole bunch of sponsors, of which I should probably have a list, but I don't. But we will definitely get to that in the coming days and weeks. And of course, who can forget the CFN retreat? Yeah, baby. Horwood Lake Lodge. Cannot wait. I've reached out to a lot of our folks who are going. They've been doing little videos for me that I'm going to be putting together this week that will not only introduce those who are going, but also the new owners of Horwood Lake Lodge. So stay tuned to that. You won't want to miss it. They're a great bunch, and we're really looking forward to having our CFN community meet Warren and Doris because they are prepping and preparing and getting things ready for what shall be another fantastic retreat. August 14th to 21st. Looking forward to that. I'm done. So let's bring in our special guest host, YVONNE Brown. How you doing, YVONNE?
Good. How are you?
Living the dream, YVONNE, one day at a time.
Yes.
So you've been busy. You have been busy lately.
A little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. We have a few things coming up. Our draws have been going well. We have we're supposed to have 2 super draws. We actually are going to have 3. The wonderful people at Camp McIntosh reached out and have donated a 2-night stay. It's an American plan, boat, gas, meals, all are included, transportation to the lodge. And so that's our next draw, along with a few other items. Those details will be going out tomorrow. We are also going to be holding our 4th annual Chester Cup. It's a bluegill sunfish tournament, fishing from shore. Those details will also go out tomorrow. And we are going to the French River at the end of September. This is a trip that was postponed from last year. It's from Thursday, September 30th, which is optional. You can go up the Friday to October 3rd. And we have 4 spots left in that. I can post the link. There we go. If anybody's interested in finding out more information, the cost, what we're doing, we are asking people to be double vaccinated, just for the protection of all of us going, plus the community up there. And I think it's important to have that in place.
It is. And, obviously with what we're doing with the retreat, as I mentioned before we went to air, that we're going to be treating it as if nobody's vaccinated. We know full well that folks are going to be vaccinated, but, social distancing will definitely be a must, as well as the use of masks when we're not eating or in our cabins. But a good majority of folks are double vaccinated. I know that, but as we said when we talked about this earlier, it's a tough question to ask because, unfortunately, it does go against folks' rights, and people certainly have strong opinions in regards to it. But at the end of the day, we have to keep everybody safe. So I definitely support what you guys are doing.
Yeah, there are a couple of people that wrote to me and just said that they disagreed with the decision. But I just had to say, for the safety of everyone, we have to have something in place. So Christina was just asking a question there. If she doesn't have a boat license, can she fish with someone? Some people are bringing their own boats, and we are going to be renting some as well. Like individuals are renting them. I'm leaving it up to the participants. We're taking care of all the bookings for the cottage, but just go on that link and you can find out more information and the cost and everything else. And if people want to send me messages directly, that's good.
Fantastic. Right on. That is very, very cool. Also, you have another announcement.
And I think that's it.
I thought you said you had 2.
I had 3: the draw, the Camp McIntosh, the Chester Cup, and the French River trip.
You're done. Fantastic. Now, we talked about it before we went there in regards to Lyme disease.
Yes.
And we have certainly both agreed that this year is the worst year for ticks than previous years combined. But, some in southwestern Ontario would disagree. They've had it pretty bad for some time now, but especially up here. As I was saying to you, normally I pick maybe 1 out of my skin, in a year. Just this past Sunday, I picked 2 out of my leg. that's one more than I usually have to do throughout the course of the year. Not to mention, of course, we have workers that go into the fields to do various tasks at work, and between the pair of them, they came out of the woods and they had like 13 of them on them. So yes, absolutely, this year is by far the worst. We're going to be able to ask Angela and Ellen to find out why this year in particular is the worst we've seen. Right on. All right, so there's the link. Thanks so much, Bill, for bringing that in. So let's bring in our guests, Angela and Ellen, who are going to tell us all about ticks, Lyme disease, and what we need to prepare ourselves with.
Hello, ladies. Nice to meet you.
Hi.
Hi. Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Well,
nice
I'm
to meet you, Yvonne.
very happy to. I know we had a lot of email exchanges back and forth, but we finally got everything sorted out. And as Scotty was saying, ticks definitely seem to be really bad this year. Like I know I've been fortunate enough to have bitten, but like 12 to 15 easily this season. And normally, like I rarely see them on my person anyways, but maybe. So first of all, could you tell us a little bit about Lyme Ontario before we actually get into Lyme disease?
Yeah.
Sure. I can take that. My name is Ellen. I'm the president of Lyme Ontario. I became the president back in 2014. Lyme Ontario was actually established in 1991. So we've been around for over 30 years. When it was first established, it was established in a church with 9 members. As of when we checked last month, we have over 2,000 members. We answer over 2,500 emails a year from people in Ontario looking for help, whether it be I've been sick, I have a tick attached, I have a friend. And what we want to do is we want to spread knowledge so people are aware of what's out there. We don't want anybody to suffer with this disease like we have. Our board member consists of myself, Joanne, who's our vice president, Angela, who's our medical consultant, and we have Bev and Jack, who are event coordinators. Angela and Jack are the healthy ones, as we say, on our board, and the 3 of us have Lyme disease.
Oh, wow.
Is it a disease that never goes away, Ellen, or can you fight it, combat it?
I've been off work since 2013 when I started seeing Dr. Lee. And I have been in treatment off and on for, oh my gosh, 8 years now. I haven't been able to work. So yeah, it can leave you, and I was healthy. It happens. You hear Lyme patients talk about how they're fine one day, they wake up, they hit the wall, as we say, and that was it. I was done, and I haven't been able to return to work since. It's a long battle. It's a long battle. So that's why we do what we do. We want people to be aware, not scared. And that's what we stress to people. We don't want people to be scared. I still go out in the gardens. I have kids. They're out and about. They play soccer. We don't want people scared, but we want you to be aware of what you need to do, how to protect yourself, so that if you do get a tick on you, as we heard you say, Scott, and both Angela and I cringed when you just said you picked it up. We want people to be aware, so you're not left to suffer.
So I'm just going to add a little bit onto that, Scotty, just from a clinical standpoint. To answer your question, is it can you beat it? Can you treat it? Can you eradicate it? You can. It is a disease that you can, with the right medication. Timing is the key thing, though, and that's why, like, Ellen and I have put so much effort into kind of advocating for it, because from a clinical standpoint, again, usually acute cases can be. When I say usually, I have seen a lot of acute cases when the timing is right that it's completely resolved. But unfortunately, you get individuals that it's just not obvious. And so they slip through the cracks. And unfortunately, Ellen is one, and I'm sure you're okay with me talking about this, Ellen, that you are one of those individuals that did slip through that crack. So her point of diagnosis was much further down the road in terms of when that actual tick bite was. So in acute cases, with the right medication, with the proper timing, yes, you can treat Lyme disease and completely eradicate it without further complications. That being said, not everybody is like that.
So can we Before we talk about the illness itself, can you or one of you talk about, you know, the ticks that carry the disease, like how to identify them? I know, like, I live in the Kingston area, and I've been told like this is one of the hot spots of the province. Lucky me.
Yeah.
And so could you tell us, like, where you're most likely to find them on your body, where in the province they, you know, they seem to be plentiful, and just how to identify them, and which ticks carry Lyme?
Yeah.
Okay, well, I can talk about, Angela will talk more about the ticks that carry Lyme. Anywhere along the rivers is your hot spots. So along the St. Lawrence, along the lakes, those are your hot spots. But it should be noted, wherever there's birds, wherever there is mice, deer, there's ticks. John Scott, who's a founder of Lyme Ontario and a researcher who retired from Lyme Ontario but still continues his research, has shown that songbirds are the #1 transmitter of ticks right now. Wow. So your bird feeders in your backyards, just like that, ticks drop off the birds and away they go. There is a map by Public Health Ontario that stresses what they call their hot spots, but we always stress that is not always necessarily true. You don't have to be in one of those designated areas to find a tick on you.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so in terms of tick identification, to date, Ellen, I'm sure you can confirm this, or whether deer ticks or what do I call it? Exodia scapularis is the only ticks that can that have been found to carry Lyme disease. That being said, other ticks like dog ticks, like the brown ticks, which are very common as well, they can carry other types of diseases, but they haven't been found to actually carry Lyme disease or Borrelia burgdorferi. So Lyme disease specifically, you usually only find them in deer ticks. So I encourage everybody on this who's listening right now just to look up what a deer tick looks like. It's some really cool tips in terms of identifying, if you haven't, because you'd be actually amazed how many people don't actually know what a tick looks like. Mm-hmm. I get a lot of spiders, I get a lot of mites, like people sending me pictures of that and asking, is that a tick? Because they don't actually know what a tick is. So do yourself a favor, look it up and identify it. But the main thing is to look for is kind of like a tear-shaped body or a sesame seed body. And you want to count the legs. You need 8 legs. Antennas, I don't know actually if they're called antennas, but the things that stick out of a bug's head, those are not legs. Okay, you need legs from the body. You need 8 legs for it to be a tick, essentially. Ticks only have 8 legs, and these are not legs. These are not legs. I'm trying to get into the camera there. Yeah.
It should also be noted, we always say no tick bite is a safe or good tick bite, because we know we have the Powassan virus that is transmitted in less than 15 minutes. We, like Angela said, Rocky Mountain spotted fever. There had, I believe it was 2 years ago in the States, a 3-year-old child diagnosed from untreated Rocky Mountain spotted fever. Like, it's not just Lyme disease you have to know about. It's these other diseases. There's also the alpha-gal allergy, which is allergy to red meat that ticks can transmit. So no tick bite is a good or a safe tick bite. That's
wow.
Yeah.
Holy smokes. Okay, I've learned a lifetime about ticks just in the last 5 minutes.
I'm glad, because we cringed, right? Like, Ellen, we were like, oh my gosh, that it scares me when individuals are like, well, you guys, in terms of hobbies, for high risk hobbies,
right.
You guys are like, that's one of the things that doctors should be aware of, that hobbies, certain outdoor hobbies puts you in a higher risk range, right? Right. And not all ticks have Lyme disease. So it's okay to get a tick bite. It doesn't mean that you're going to get the disease, but just be aware of it, and just be aware of if your health changes for some reason, that summer flu, that weird summer flu, or like Ellen mentioned, that you hit that wall and then it's just like, I don't know what's going on. And then things just decline. You are a fisherman, or you have these high risk hobbies, you have to get checked for Lyme disease and other tick-borne infections. Is essentially what we're all about, the tick-borne infections, not just Lyme disease.
So it would be if someone suspected, or that red bullseye when you get bitten, is that all bites from a tick, or is it just if it has Lyme?
So if you do get the bullseye rash, that means that the Lyme bacteria has been transmitted. But it should be known that less than 40% actually get the bullseye rash or a rash of any kind.
Yeah.
And we have pictures of rashes and links to rashes because people actually look for literally the bullseye.
Mm-hmm.
And Angel, I'm quite sure, has seen, as a clinician, has seen the different types of rashes that it actually can have. So a lot of times the case definition in Ontario, in order to be treated correctly, and this is one of the many political things that we battle, is you have to have the bullseye rash, the tick has to be attached for a certain time, and you got to be in one of those hot spots that we were talking about on the map. That's why so many are being left to suffer, because of the fact that someone like me who doesn't remember the tick bite, doesn't remember the rash, but hey, I grew up in Long Point, Turkey Point, summers, but I only had one of the three. Nope, you can have Lyme disease, and that's what we hear a lot of. So it's important that people understand, if you get that rash, you need to get treatment right away, because that means the bacteria has been transmitted, but it's, again, not necessarily just that rash.
And it's such a great question, Yvonne, and I'm glad you brought it up, because that's from the public's perspective in terms of recognizing and when to kind of reach out for help. Is a lot of individuals recognize Lyme disease as that bullseye rash, that classic bullseye rash, which may happen, which may not. But Ellen just the statistics are actually showing that it's more rare than you actually think in terms of that classic bullseye rash. And individuals don't actually know what a bullseye rash looks like. They think, there's a little bit of discrepancy in terms of what that classic rash looks like. But if there is a tick bite, if there is a known tick bite with that bullseye rash, it's an absolute. Okay. So like tick bite, bullseye rash, you need medications. Don't even go down the road of testing or anything. You just need medication. That is an absolute, what we call a clinical absolute for Lyme disease. And so you have to talk to your doctor about that.
Okay. So if someone gets bitten and doesn't see a rash and doesn't remember the bite or anything, what are some of the symptoms that a person might feel to make them think like, I'm not feeling normal? Or is there anything particular that someone could say, okay, maybe I should be tested?
Yeah. Another good question. And it's a difficult one too, because I can give you the obvious signs, but again, the issue with Lyme disease, it's like one of those things. I call it a spectrum disease, because you get individuals that actually show extreme signs. So like the classic signs. So you get the fever, you get the just the general malaise, joint pain, headache is a very common, neck stiffness, cognitive decline, where you start like you can't function, you can't remember things, heart issues, digestive issues, vomiting. So it looks like the flu essentially. So you get individuals that present like that. But what I'm actually finding is that people may present like that and they ride through it. They're like, oh, this is just a cold or a flu. Yeah. But if it comes back, more in a pattern of, okay, now my knees are involved. Like, why is one joint, my left joint, knee joint hurting? And then now it's moved to my elbow, and now it's my wrist. And it starts, we call that joint migration, or the migration of the pain through the joints. And then the possibility of a facial paralysis may happen. And that doesn't happen right away. That usually happens maybe a week later, 2 weeks later. That is an obvious sign that you're looking at. You have to be investigated for Lyme disease, let's say. So that kind of pattern. So you get sick, you ride through it, and you're like, oh, I'm actually getting better. And then the return of symptoms, and with more symptoms involved, the joints, the facial paralysis, that kind of stuff. And then the fever will come and go. That's kind of the classic presentation. And then you get individuals that I have a lot of elite athletes in my practice. They don't present with basically anything. I had a 50-year-old woman have a dull ache in her hip. And for some reason, her GP decided to say, okay, you know what? I know you're an avid hiker. Let's just test you for Lyme disease. And it was positive.
Wow.
Versus I have a 20-year-old hiker who went to New York State, full heart block, temporary pacemaker, and again, confirmed Lyme disease case. So you get those two extremes as well.
Mm-hmm.
So the best thing I could say to you is that look for a weird summer flu. And obviously you guys, again, being in a high risk sport, not to scare you, but you guys are generally considered a higher risk sport, that summer flu, and then just your health, possibly that waxing and waning, you're feeling better, but then it returns again. And then these weird flares, I'm sure Ellen can attest to that waxing and waning picture.
Mm-hmm.
That's something where you just kind of want to maybe just investigate sooner than later, and tell your doctor, communicate with them and say, listen, I'm an avid fisher.
Yeah.
And I've been exposed to Lyme. I live in certain areas, or yeah. I hope that clarifies, yeah.
Yeah. If so for us that, we are out in the outdoors quite a bit, what areas should we be looking at? Are there any particular areas on the body where they like I've heard of, behind the knee and, in kind of warm, sort of moist areas, I guess, like under the arms or
in the hairline. That's another, especially girls with long hair, back of the hairline and behind the ears, the knees, the groin, anywhere a tick. We've had them in calves. We've had them in sneakers. I've heard people between toes. I've heard in private parts is the other thing. That's why we recommend when you come in from outdoors, take your clothes off, throw them in the dryer in high heat for at least 10 minutes because it kills the ticks, and have a shower head to toe and have someone to always check and make sure.
Absolutely. And Yvonne, just for women, it's always the hairline. I would say 90% of the individuals that actually saw a tick bite, for women, it's always the hairline and it's back hair, and same with children. It's always in the hairline.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So that's like a hot spot for sure.
No, that's good. That's good information.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I shaved it off last year.
I wish I looked that good. I would do it as well.
So what can we do to try and reduce the risk? I don't think there's 100% foolproof way of preventing. So what can how do we reduce the risk?
So for what we recommend is people use bug repellent. We have heard from years from anglers and hunters that DEET does not work. One of our board members, her husband was an avid hunter, and he would come in just covered with ticks on him with using DEET. So we know the number one thing that you can use is permethrin, but it's no longer sold in Canada. But Mark's Workwear Warehouse has a line called the No Fly line, which the clothes are actually treated in permethrin and sold, and I think they're good for 75 washes. Someone would have to double check, but they sell the hats, the shirts, and whatnot. And if not, then it's in carton. Am I saying it right, Angela?
Yeah, in carton. Yeah.
Yeah, is what you need. It's a 20%. I know Avon sells. A lot of people use the Skin So Soft from Avon, but that's only a 10% of it in there. So if you do that, you have to apply it more often. There's different ones on our website and on our Facebook page that we always post. There's Piactive, there's Combat, there's a Deep Wood ones that carries it. So we actually would tell people to use, but it's nothing. Like you said, Yvonne, nothing is guaranteed.
Yeah.
You use your spray, you have to do the tick checks head to toe, put your clothes in the dryer on high heat. So if there are ticks attached to it, because I don't know if you can see, a lot of people when we talk about ticks, they look for, I don't know, like people are shocked. I wish we could show you because we actually have them in vials. Like a tick. Like if you take a pen and put a dot on a piece of paper, that's how big a tick could be. So that's why it's so easy to miss them.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's the best way. Am I missing anything for protection, Angela, that I can think of? I don't think so.
My biggest thing would be sorry, Scotty.
What about a Thermocell? Does a Thermocell help, or is it strictly for mosquitoes?
Good question.
I mean, I have one, but it's for mosquitoes. I know there is sprays that people have used in the past, like garlic sprays and stuff. They say that they work. I'm trying to remember the name of the company. There was a company that came to one of our walks that sold it and said it was good for ticks. But the Thermocells, no, I know that for a fact because I have. I wish, but no, not unfortunately.
Interesting.
Yeah, I just stress the tick checks. Like that's like obviously the bug sprays are great. Also, just for other vector-borne diseases as well, like West Nile and stuff like that. But the bug sprays, absolutely. But the tick checks is where you're really going to, if you find it, and we're obviously going to talk about the steps to do if you do find a tick and you suspect that, or you at least you want to get it checked. It's the tick checks, and with children as well. And think about it in terms of if you bathe your children nightly, just do a quick check. Like even just if it's just running your hands down their arms or like through their back, you'll feel a tick attached. Like you'll feel like a little bit like Scotty, I'm sure you, like if you ran over where a tick is attached, you'll feel like it's like a new mole. And so you'll like just doing stuff like that just to have peace of mind. That's where, and like, please check the hairline. Like that's majority of, yeah.
One question I do have for you, Angela, is when a tick is on you, obviously it walks around and tries to find the most perfect spot. But how long can a tick be on you before it actually starts to burrow in your skin?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know the answer to that.
Well, we know that as soon as it attaches and as soon as it finds its spot, from what I've understood from talking with John and our other researchers, it can start to burrow right away. Once it finds that spot that it likes, like the back of the line, neck, and that. A lot of people you will hear where they find them constantly climbing on them. They just haven't found it's usually if they're climbing on their pants and that. If it finds the skin and if it can, it's going in you, sadly, believe it or not. And then we'll talk, I guess, a little bit. Yvonne had some questions about tick removal, but yeah.
Yeah. So why don't we talk? That's a good. Sorry, go ahead, Scotty.
Right. I have one question. To be honest with you, and I really don't know if you've already touched on it, but where did these darn things come from in the first place?
Well, the first one I do believe was found back in the 80s. Now I want to check my history. Oh, shame on me. I think the 80s in Long Point, but they actually originated from Connecticut. In New York, it was a group of moms who put 2 and 2 together of why all these children were suffering from arthritis. And that was back in the 70s, Angela?
I actually have no idea where it came from. Yeah, I know where you're talking about in terms of the discovery of Lyme disease, like the actual bacteria. But ticks, I'm guessing because they're just resilient.
They're resilient.
They've been around for a long time. But the weather's changing. Yeah.
Sorry, Angela, I apologize.
No, that's okay.
We always hear, why don't we spray? Why don't we spray? But what we remind people of is in the States, they do use pesticides and their ticks are still exploding. Like Angela said, they are resilient in lasting. So they originated, we do know, from Connecticut. That was where the first cases of Lyme disease was first discovered. And then it went to Long Point, Turkey Point, and then up the rivers and up the lakes, and away we went.
So we have a CFNer who's up in the Timmins area, and there's nothing but wood up there. Obviously, ticks are something that I would imagine will eventually migrate to a certain area. But how far can these ticks go? Can they go right up?
Everywhere. They're in Timmins. I know that. We get emails from it. It should be noted, ticks have been found on every continent except for Antarctica.
Okay.
So they're everywhere around the world. Like it's not just it's not just a North American, a Canadian, or US. They are everywhere, and they are across the provinces. They're lasting through our winters now, and they're coming out booming. Like the tick population is just. I can't even. When we started this in 2014 to now, it is. Every year we keep saying, the board members, it can't be worse than last year. And it's like we eat our words every year because
I was just gonna say that, Ellen. We hear when you started and you're like, this year seems to be the worst. And it's like we hear that every year. But it's true. Like that's the thing. You guys, what you're observing is absolutely true. Every year it just gets worse. And and just obviously the concern of Lyme disease just gets much worse. So
incredible.
But the awareness is getting there. Alan?
Sure.
It'll be our job.
Yeah.
It is tonight. It is tonight. Go ahead, Yvonne. I know you got more questions.
I was just wondering if you could explain that ticks don't jump like fleas. A lot of people think, oh, they're going to jump on me. Can you talk a little bit about how they get onto a person or an animal?
Do you want me to take that, Angela?
Yeah, go for it, Ellen.
Okay, so ticks, if this was a piece of grass or if they're laying, they actually will climb to the tip of the grass, and as you're walking by, you'll brush them. That's why when you're on hikes and that, it's necessary to stay on the path, especially for hikes and stuff. When you brush by, they just clench. They do not jump. They do not anything like that. They literally, it's when you're walking by and you brush against that grass, that's when they hitchhike their ride and off they go.
Do they, this is what I've read, they kind of hold on to, let's say, a blade of grass with their back legs, and they just kind of put their front legs out,
Yeah.
and we'll just grab onto what comes next, or what comes by them?
If you've ever seen a tick, they almost have like a barb in them. So like a barb on their legs, and that's how it's able to grab to you. They're really disgusting little buggers.
Yeah, and they're hard to kill. Like I was telling Scotty, I was sitting here maybe 3 weeks ago, and I felt something crawling up my back, and it was a tick, and I put it on the keyboard, and I was trying to kill it, and it just, I had to take something like super hard just to kill it.
Okay, that's another thing we should mention. Angela and I will tell you, never kill a tick. Save the tick for testing.
Oh, okay.
Because you don't know. Look, I see Angela just sitting there cringing. That's a lot of people find them as, it was funny, Scotty, when you were talking, Angela and I were texting going, oh my God, did he just say he picked off a tick? When you pick a tick, it's necessary to save the tick. Because even though you don't know if it was attached when you found it, it doesn't mean it just didn't come from an attached place. And if you had that tick, you put it in a Ziploc bag or a Tupperware container with a moist paper towel, you can freeze it. And then we'll talk more about what to do with it after that.
Okay. Oh, that's good to know.
Absolutely.
You could have been getting a lot of mail from me this year. So we were talking, like, it does seem to be a bad year. Is there any reason why it's a bad year, or is it just that they are like breeding? Is it just?
Well, it was a very mild winter, right? We didn't have a very harsh winter. That's one of the reasons we hear a lot from researchers is the weather is a big contributing factor. And we know the migrating birds are another contributing factor. And we know we're getting a lot of emails, and I really think it's a lot to do with COVID, because people have not been able to go to the malls and being out with their friends. So they're hiking, they're canoeing, they're fishing. So they're out more. And like Angela said, the Lyme awareness is getting out there from patient advocates and other patients. That's who's spreading the word about them, that we're hearing more and more of.
And can you tell us, I just want to say thanks to Bill. He's been posting all sorts of links to your site, to the different pages on your site. Outside of that, are there any other resources?
Yes, there's groups on our website, actually. On one of the pages, there's support, and there's all different links for all different kinds of Lyme disease groups. Facebook, if you're ever stuck, there's lots of Facebook chat rooms. There's CanLyme, who's on the federal level. We have provincial groups across Canada that we all work together, trying to get awareness, trying to get more better testing, treatment, diagnosis for Canadians across Canada. And then, yeah.
I do want to mention one resource that I think has been has made huge impact in Ontario, especially for individuals that want to test a tick that was attached, especially with parents. We see them use this resource a lot. Is Genetics is a company, and it's private testing, so it's not through public health. I don't think, Ellen, did we get a confirmation on whether or not Public Health of Ontario is still testing for ticks?
Okay, so that's before we start. Yes, good point, Angela. Right now, we have been formed as of last summer, Public Health Ontario and across Canada. So both federal and provincial levels are not doing any tick testing, nor are they doing any tick surveillance. So that means they don't know where the hotspots are expanding to, because they haven't done any tick dragging.
Wow,
that's very important to know. So when you go, Angela will go back to a thing. If you go to the hospital or doctor and if you have a tick and they say we're going to send it away for testing, I don't know where they're sending it to because it's not being tested provincially. So that's one important fact that people need to know is if you have a tick attack, you go to the doctor because you don't feel safe removing it, you want that tick back because 9 times out of 10, we've heard it goes in the garbage.
Oh. I just saw on the website, there's a thing called genetics.
Yes.
So that's the company. So that's a local company actually in Ontario, and Justin Wood is the owner of it, and he's fantastic. He's linked with McLAUGHLIN Labs now at Guelph University, but he will test if you. But keep in mind it is private, a private lab, so there's obviously a charge with it. But if you want to send your ticks, he will test for Lyme disease and other types of diseases as well, other tick-borne diseases as well. But there's other options as well. Like we're not promoting just his company. Like you can send it to other labs in California. And I also think that in Germany they accept ticks as well. But just as a local resource, this is fantastic. So
it's a quick turnaround time. That's the other thing too. Public health was taken anywhere from 3 to 6 months to get the results back. So if you have a doctor who was waiting for the tick results to come back before treating, by the time they were getting treating, it was already in a chronic phase. Like you're past, like the bacteria is throughout the body. Where Justin, I've heard people have got it back within 4 days, 5 days from him. So it's a small fee. And even if, like Angela said, if you went to Igenics or if you went to Armin Labs, for what Lyme patients have spent out of pocket for testing and treatment, I tell people, spend the money. I know even if you get 4 or 5 ticks on you and you just do the basic Lyme panel, I think it's like $50 or $60. It's not very much. I would spend it in a heartbeat compared to, like, we have Lyme patients who are living in their cars who have lost everything trying to pay for treatment and stuff like that. So when you get that tick, I tell everybody it's better safe than sorry. It will be the best $50. You'll be able to sleep at night. It's just the best.
So somebody like Scotty, like if you've so just listening to you in terms of like you guys are probably thinking, well, I don't want to get every single tick tested because if you have multiple tick bites or multiple exposure to ticks, that's a lot of money, and that's you're probably thinking I can't do that. But what Ellen said and suggested is basically note it, pull it, put it in either a little tube. I'm just going to show you what a little tube potentially could look like. You can get this on Amazon, these like little tubes, or you can even just put it in this little baggie, date it, and then stick it in the freezer. And if for some reason your health changes over, let's say the next 3 months or whatever, yank that out of the freezer and get it tested, just to save you that hassle of fighting an uphill battle with your doctor who's like, well, you what tick bite, or do you know what I mean? Like you can just send it to genetics and just get it tested and say, I got this tick tested, it had Lyme disease, but this tick bite was on this date or whatever. Just save it. You don't have to test every single tick that's attached to you. Just save that tick and just freeze it and date it. And then
that's good to know.
So I have one question for you, Angela. And Jason BARNUCZ brought it up, but for some of us like myself, Jason and YVONNE, who are in the outdoors quite a bit, whether we're turkey hunting, bear hunting, fishing, you name it. How often should we be testing ourselves for Lyme disease?
It's not generally recommended that you test for Lyme disease as like a prevention or like you test like your cholesterol levels or like for diabetes or something. It's not recommended that you actually do that. It's only if you have clinical signs of it. And I know that like earlier I mentioned that sometimes clinical signs are not that obvious. Convincing your doc without the clinical signs at this point it's probably you won't get that testing. Yeah, it's not going to happen. And then going private testing, it's not worth it at that point. That being said, just keep it in mind if there's just something in terms of like you guys, like I tell my patients this all the time. You guys know what is wrong with you. So if you're finding that you're waxing and waning in terms of these weird symptoms that just won't go away, but then 2 days later you feel fine and then they just come back again. Again, you guys being in a high risk group, maybe that's enough for you to just kind of get tested. just keep in mind that if you're on any form of long-term antibiotics, or if you're on any form of immunosuppressive drugs, methotrexate, prednisone, you guys aren't great candidates for it. But that's something you have to talk to your doc about, because you're going to have to be a little bit more strategic in terms of how you time the testing. But just bottom line is that if your health changes for some reason, pull out that tick out of the freezer, or consider Lyme disease as something that you need to investigate, or any other tick-borne infections.
It's great information. Learning so much.
When we talk about symptoms, the other thing you'll hear from Lyme patients when Angela's talking about it is it's the great
imitator. Yeah.
Thank you, Angela. So a lot of patients are misdiagnosed with fibromyalgia, MS, and chronic fatigue syndrome. So when people say, what does Lyme disease feel like? I'm going to say, you take all three, roll it in a ball, and that's what we feel like on a daily basis.
Absolutely.
And what are the more, not to dwell on the real negative side of it, but what are the more serious consequences? You know, if it's left unchecked, or just for someone like yourself, Ellen, who's lived with it, and now, you know, I'm not able to work. And what are the more serious consequences down the road that this disease could bring?
For Lyme patients, Angela can talk about this too. It's a lot of the brain. For myself personally, it's a lot of the brain fog. Word search, that's another big one. Heart. A lot of patients can affect the heart, called Lyme carditis, where a pacemaker can actually be required or needed if not treated correctly. What else? I think those are the two. I mean, it's the daily aches and pains, right? It wears you down mentally, physically, not knowing what's going on. Like before I was diagnosed, not knowing what the heck is going on. Something's going on. You know, something's going on, but you don't know what it is. And a lot of Lyme patients are treated. How is the political word I want to say, Angela? We've been called Lyme loonies, right? We're a bunch of kooks. There's nothing wrong with you. But actual physical symptoms, they can be debilitating. We've seen people in wheelchairs. We've seen people, like I said, pacemakers, lose their jobs, lose their homes, lose their families, lose relationships. So it just doesn't affect you physically. It affects you mentally. It affects you all around your personal life.
Yeah.
Now, I've got a good question here from Terry, who's out in BC. Do you need the actual tick to have an accurate test? Or how accurate is just getting your blood tested for Lyme disease?
I'll start and Angela can finish, because I won't be political. Because I've had to fight this so long. The testing for Canada is just, it's horrible. It misses it only catches 35% of positive cases.
That's what I've heard, yeah.
So when patients go and they get tested and they're told, no, it's not Lyme disease, that's not always true. We always say to start with the Canadian test, because you never know, but you can't close the door. If the diagnosis is known, like Angela said, you're still having the migrating pain, you're still having the headaches, the heart palpitations, the brain fog. You don't know. So then that's why we seek out doctors who are trained and specialized in Lyme disease, because we got to remember that too, right? Our doctors are trained for maybe an hour, 2 hours in all of their career on Lyme disease. That's it. Wow. And then infectious disease doctors, it's next to impossible to get in to see them.
Well, I have some of those, not to make light of anything, but I have some of these symptoms already, and I'm pretty sure I don't have Lyme disease. So, you know, I'm concerned for folks who might be assuming that that's just the norm. That's how I've always been. I don't anticipate that I have Lyme disease. I've always had aches and pains. Arthritis is something that's hereditary in my family.
Yeah.
You know, heart palpitations, that kind of thing, are something that my father had or my mother had. So I can see it being passed off just by the general population, never mind just the doctors.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. But you know your body. And that's what Angela said. You know your body. So, I mean, every patient's different. Every person's different. That's what's really hard too with this is Angela will tell you probably of all the people she's seen, no two people have the same cases. No two people are treated the same. No two people have the same symptoms. So that's why it's so hard to treat, to diagnose this disease.
Yeah. So just back to that question, Terry's question, in terms of having a tick bite to get having a tick for an accurate test, it helps. It helps if you can, if you have a picture of a tick bite, if you actually have a tick. Obviously, there's more testing you can do on a tick, so it helps. But it doesn't change in terms of what the statistics of the blood test actually will turn out to be. There's an ideal window. The Ontario testing is a valid test. We can't refuse the evidence that supports it. That's why IDSA, that's why our CDC guidelines use it. The only caveat being is that the patient has to be a good candidate for the test. But what's happening is the physicians are actually using it as a blanket test. So they think that test is ideal for everybody. But in reality, the patient has to be ideal for the test. And when that doesn't match, then you get the people that fall through the cracks. So for you to be a good candidate, like I mentioned earlier, there has to be no medication interference. You have to fit a perfect window in terms of when that tick bite happened. But you can imagine how many people don't actually know when that tick bite happened. Yeah. So kind of framing that ideal window is tricky in itself. So you're looking at potentially patients getting tested way too early, and then it comes back false negative, and then the doc says, nope, you can't have Lyme. There's no way you can have it. Versus then there's that close window when patients don't. Sorry, my computer's here. My husband's just trying to. Just gonna plug this in before I lock out. But
just to recap, not that to cut you off by any, but I am getting a lot of questions in the comments. So if we could recap, if you're outside and you come home and you do your physical check and you find a tick, put it in a Ziploc bag or a pill bottle or some kind of container. Put it in your freezer and hold it. If you start to take on symptoms that are abnormal to what you normally feel, at that point, you then send it to genetics and perhaps get yourself tested?
Now, if the tick's attached, though, if the tick has been attached, like if you find it crawling on you, that's great to do. If you find it attached to you and it looks like a pebble or it's been blown up and it's been those are the ones that have been on you who could possibly have transmitted. And those are the ones where I would not take the wait and see approach. Okay. That's the dangerous approach. So that should be noted. If you find one attached to you, I know Yvonne had talked about this, McNaughta and Canline, two fantastic, G. McNaughta Foundation, Rosanna McNaughta, I don't know if McNaughta Wineries, she lost her husband to Lyme disease. Untreated Lyme disease years ago. And so she started a fantastic lab. It's in Guelph that Angela's talked about. And they sell these wonderful tick kits. And they have everything you need in them. And the best tool they have are these, if you can see them. Yep. They're fine tip tweezers with a magnifying glass because of how small they can actually be with ticks. So we just want to go in as close as you can and pull straight up. You don't want to twist. You don't want to wiggle it. You do, you can regurgitate. That tick will regurgitate everything into you. When you get that tick out, that's when you put it into their containers, or like we've talked about, take pictures of the tick bite. We can't stress this enough. Constantly take pictures of those tick bites as a kind of a medical, like a history that you're keeping. So for rash forms or anything like that, you take pictures of the tick. So, if you don't want to send it off, or if you can't, and some people can't afford to, and that's okay. You have all this information documented. So you can then go to your doctor and say, okay, I have a tick, can't send it off. I know public health isn't testing. Here's the tick, here's the pictures, here's the spot. What do we do? So if they are attached, they have got to be removed correctly and they should be saved. It's got to be documented. And I've even told people, even if you're not saying your tick, go to your doctor so they know, and it's in your medical file, that you came in on July 19th with a tick bite, a known tick bite, and it's in there. So like Angela says, 6 months from now, a year from now, 2 years from now, they can go back and it's referenced there that yes, there was a tick bite at some point in your medical history.
But your summary, Scotty, I would say that's probably the most thorough approach.
Okay.
Do it that way. And like Ellen's right, like it just depends on your situation, and it depends on whether or not like an engorged tick is very different than a tick that hasn't actually mealed, like even a female tick versus a male tick. But that being said, just save them all, to be honest, because you need to document this, especially since this is a bit of an uphill battle in terms of proving your case. And unfortunately, that's what it's gonna be like in certain areas. Actually, Yvonne, where you're from, Kingston seems to be a little bit more open to the idea and a little bit more less of an uphill battle. But that being said, you need to document everything, because everything and every single individual in terms of their immune response is so different. So you need to just get your ducks in order. And then again, I can't stress this enough, that you guys, just in terms of your that high risk side of things, you just want to make sure that you can prove your case, because sometimes that's what it's about, right, Ellen? Like you were behind. Like I have patients coming to me all the time trying to prove it to me, and you don't really have to prove it to me, but I can see why there's that idea of like, let me prove this to you. And so, but it does help, like sitting from a clinician viewpoint, it does help if you can prove your case. Then right away you're like, okay, you need to do this, 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 and this. Yeah.
I know on the website you sell those tick kits for $20. And I just wanted to note that every time I do this segment with Scotty once a month, I have a giveaway at the end of it. I post a question. It'll come out tomorrow based on this interview. It'll be a question about some information that you've provided. And then I'm going to purchase 3 kits.
No, don't do that, Yvonne, for having us. We'll all send you 3. We're actually almost sold out of them for the season.
Oh.
So I will send you, because of how many people have been on, and this has just been wonderful. And this is what we like to do. This is the type of awareness and information. I will send you 5 tickets.
Oh,
so
wow.
at the end of this tonight, send me an email and we'll send you 5 tickets that you can do your draw and you can give away. How's
Wonderful. That? Good. And on behalf of, not that I'm wrapping you up, but on behalf of Ontario Women Anglers, because we know that you are nonprofit and do tremendous work, we're sending a donation in support of Lyme Ontario.
Yay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. But
I do. Sorry. Go ahead.
No, go.
It begs the question, because of course, you're selling these kits, obviously to help folks, remove them. I'm going to suggest that perhaps they don't do it alone, that they might want to get, tell one of their partners or friends or what have you to help them, because there's going to be spots that some of us larger folk aren't going to be able to see necessarily. So, employing the help of others is definitely a goal. But what is the goal of Lyme Ontario? With all of this being said and all the information and I'll tell you, very valuable information that you've offered, what is your goal at Lyme Ontario? To make testing more accessible, or
so
just...
Sorry, Scotty, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Go ahead.
So what we want to do is we want better testing, treatment, and diagnosis. We want awareness, education, and we will help fund with research. We're nonprofit, so everything we do and everything we've done over the years is literally we rely on donations. We used to have these wonderful, amazing walks in Burlington, but due to COVID, they've had to stop. And then we donate to research. We send out brochures if people email us for brochures. It's the awareness. Where's that place we always set up our booth at, Angela? The International Center for cottage shows, sportsman shows, set up booths for that. So all of our funding goes to that. It's literally for education and awareness. Like I said, we don't want people to suffer. Just be aware. Just be aware what's out there in your surrounding. But it's for the better testing, treatment, and diagnosis of Canadians and people in Ontario.
I feel like it's a touch point somewhere where individuals can get, because we're not, that's the thing about Lyme disease, and anybody kind of looking up Lyme disease, you're going to get two medical camps fighting, and for patients or for individuals or members of the public, you don't care about that. Like we don't care about the egos. We just need information and specific information for your case. And that's where I feel like Lyme Ontario does a really good job. We give you both information, and we allow you to kind of figure out whether or not, or we give you the information so you can make that choice on in terms of what's the best case scenario. Do you fit into this criteria? And it's not just that classic bullseye rash criteria, that you could fall within this range as well, and where to get those resources in terms of to get help and not be seen as a lunatic or whatever. Yeah.
Well, I want to say thanks so much. Like,
No problem.
first of all, for coming on the show and for the amount of information that you've given tonight. I think you've really given a lot of people, things to think about. I think everybody's kind of feeling like kind of itchy. And this show, it's not over yet, but it's recorded, so I can send a link out to other people after the fact. And I think it's well worth people learning more about, especially if they are outdoors people.
Absolutely.
Well, if anybody has any questions, they can always send an email, and we have an email, info@lymeontario.com. It's on our website as well. We have our Facebook page. We're always here, and we try to do the best we can.
We are.
Yeah, I know it's challenging. I used to run a nonprofit charity, so I understand the ongoing challenge of funding and support and building relationships with other community partners. So just my hat's off to you for everything that you do in the community.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you for having us. That was great.
Yes, we really appreciate it.
Thanks, ladies. Thanks so much for doing this.
Okay, we'll be in touch.
Bye-bye.
Okay, bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Well, holy smokes, Yvonne.
That was great.
It was fantastic, and I hope, because I was getting the impression just from some of the comments in that section that people weren't necessarily clear on what to do. So just going back, at the end of the day, Bill Landry's really concerned because he's picked a lot of ticks off him. You don't necessarily have to get tested unless you are feeling symptoms that are different than that of what you would feel normally. Some people have suggested that, perhaps it might be the same symptoms as COVID. Not to bring light to it, but I'm sure there's a lot of folks out there that suffer with a little bit of pain each and every day, a little bit of uncomfortableness. But if it's something that is not normal and it has just come on, say, in the last 2-3 years, yeah, absolutely. It's something that you need to be concerned about. And I know Mike Brazeau mentioned, well, if we're not getting the proper testing, why are we keeping the ticks? Well, my simple answer to that, based on what I heard tonight, was in case this testing improves, you have the tick in hand and you can use it then. But
and if you do have those symptoms and you try to get tested and you say, well, I've got the tick from that bite, or you found it on your person. So I'm so glad that they came on the show. It's been something that probably for over a year now that I've really thought we should have some sort of seminar and try to get the information out to as many people as possible.
Right on. Well, I'll tell you, we'll do our best to match whatever it is that you're going to donate on WA. Because as I said, based on just what I heard tonight, I know I have a renewed respect for ticks that I thought were just like mosquitoes. You knock them off, you get rid of them, what have you. I had no idea to the extent of what Lyme disease was and the potential debilitating results of getting infected by these bugs. Again, Ivana, thanks so much for bringing what I would consider one of the most informative guests on to date. And
you're very welcome.
Yeah, can't thank you enough.
Okay, well, we will see you next month, I suppose.
Yes.
I don't know with who yet, but we'll figure it out.
Well, as I said, you keep setting that bar so high. I honestly, I don't know who you're going to bring on next, but as always, I always look forward to it because if I'm not going to get informed, I certainly am entertained. So it never ceases to amaze me who it is that you bring on and some of the characters that we get to meet. But this one, especially for all of us who are outdoor enthusiasts, this was an eye-opening podcast, I'll tell you.
Yeah, and I encourage, like, once your show is done, whether it's tonight, tomorrow, or through the week, for people to share this. try to get the information out as much as we can, and encourage people to have a look at their website, because there's lots of good information and resources on there too.
Right on. All right. Well, stay tuned, folks. In the coming days, Yvonne is going to be putting up a post that will allow you a chance to win one of the 5 that Lyme Ontario and the girls Angela and Ellen have put forth. So, and I'm sure there's going to be a long list of folks that are going to want those kits, because, man, I'll tell you, after hearing this, I'm one of them.
Yes. Okay. Thanks, Scotty. Have a good night,
right.
and we will see you in August.
Thanks very much, Yvonne. Appreciate it. Enjoy your night.
Good night, everybody.
Bye now. Holy smokes. Extremely educational. Woke me up a little bit. I had no idea. I had no idea. That's all I'm going to say. I learned a lot, and I'm so glad that Yvonne did this for us. And big shout out to Angela and Ellen. We're going to bring on our featured guest, which of course is Big Jim McLAUGHLin, the one and only. And before we do, here is a word from our sponsor.
Honoring past achievements as we step into the future. Elevate, innovate, reimagine. Make the best better. That's what we do. Radically redefined, the NRX Plus is the culmination of our obsessive drive to forge the most advanced fishing tools on the planet.
Yeah, buddy.
I was just fiddling around with some baits here.
The dreaded Tokyo rig. Ugh, dreaded.
What's going on?
Not much, dude. As I said, we learned a heck of a lot about ticks and Lyme disease.
Yeah, I was listening there a bit.
I think it's a little bit more eye-opening. I mean, I could sense it when they were hearing me say that. Yeah, I dug 2 out this weekend, which is rare, because normally I'm maybe picking 1 a year out. But 2 in one day was a little bit alarming.
Well, like one of the ladies said too, everybody's out in the bush.
Yeah.
People are going for walks. They're going outside town and going down a trail. They're walking on the road. It's the grass isn't cut. Like they didn't cut the they didn't cut the grass behind my house at the park here for 15 months.
Right.
The grass was like this high. I wouldn't go back there. We picked a couple off the dog. I think we've seen 3 since we've been here, but when we moved, there's a real hotbed, and there has been for years above Brockville and east of there. It was nothing for us to pick 15, 20 off the dogs like a year. I only ever got a few off myself. I don't think anything ever happened, though, or anything like that. I haven't noticed.
Well, I'll tell you, you don't want to downplay it. And I guess I maybe, the natural reaction is to sort of downplay it, because, how bad could this be?
Yeah, it's another one of those things that you don't want to get fear involved. Say you're not going to the bush. It's just like anything else. You have to be careful of what you do. There's more chance of you getting hit by a car than getting Lyme disease. So you be really careful when you're out there, And once again, I'm not playing. I have a really good friend. I don't know whether you've ever seen a TV show with a beautiful lady called Catherine Maroon. It was called What a Catch.
Yes.
She did. Yeah. Okay. Catherine Maroon is like deathly ill and has been for like 20 years.
Oh, no way.
From Lyme disease. She is like an international expert. She's addressed Congress in the States about the lack of Lyme, like the way they treat it in the States. And the States is a lot better than we are. It's a lot better than we are. And just before Tammy's cancer surfaced, we actually thought, I guess, the symptoms of the cancer at times could mimic something like that. And Catherine and her had a talk on the phone one day. She lives in the Bahamas, and she actually had a talk on the phone with Tammy for about an hour one day. I used to talk to her often, and she's just a beautiful person. She's just a golden soul. And on top of that, I mean, they've never put a more beautiful woman on the face of the earth. Not that should make a difference for anything, but she was just like an incredible person. Well, I shouldn't say was. I'm sure she still is, but I know that she was like deathly ill. She just was not happy. It was you could just see it was no fun with her, and she became a huge advocate in the U.S. And like I said, she appeared before Congress with a row of doctors behind her that were like the best in the world to make them come after this and do something about it. I don't know whatever happened. She got really ill, and we just sort of didn't chat anymore. You know, as things happen in life, things go opposite directions. I hope she's okay. But
as I mentioned, Jim, like yourself, you know, myself, I'm sure there's lots of people. Bill might have ailments, you know, tweaks and whatever, sores, pains, whatever. I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of us that are living with a certain amount of pain each day or discomfort. Don't think anything of it because it's just something that we get used to, and we are outdoor enthusiasts. So it does beg the question, you know, do we get tested? How bad do the symptoms have to be before we get tested? So these are all questions that I hope we were answered.
Yeah, and like you know, like you had the story on about my buddy Spencer.
Yeah,
I mean, you know, I watched Spencer grow up, him and his brother, and then they used to work at LeBaron in Ottawa together. Then they went they're off to, you know, their separate ways in life and doing their thing with the families and the kids. This is awesome. And then, you know, Spencer gets the dream job. He works for Shimano. You know, everybody wants to work for Shimano, and he gets the dream job, and now he gets this damn Lyme disease, and he's got the other one. What was the other disease that they mentioned with it? There was another one that he's got. There's a couple of them that come from it, apparently.
I'm sure someone's going to post it in the chat, but yeah, there are a couple that do mirror.
I forget what it was, but he's got one of the other ones too.
Right.
And I mean, you know, I hope I know Dave Chong is working on doing an auction to raise some money for him.
Yeah.
Because it's tremendously draining. Like, I mean, people don't realize some of the medical things that you go, like, you know, just like when I had the cancer, you know, getting a needle that was $1,100 every month.
Yeah. Well, some of them were chronic fatigue syndrome. There was that. Then you've got heart palpitations. You know, these are all things that, you know, let's face it, for some of us, we're a little on in years, you probably suffer from. So how do you decipher between the two? I'd like to say that you err on the side of caution and get the test done if you've tried everything else. So, but yeah.
Well, I know that I know some of these costs, boy, the way they could add up was incredible. I remember the first time I got the needle because I was in a study, and I ordered the prescription and I went to pick it up, and it was like 8 o'clock at night, and I was exhausted because it was right in the middle of the cancer. I was messed up, And I went down to get it myself, and I go in, and the guy says, he looked at me and he goes, "It's $1,193 even." And I said to him, "Well, that's not bad." And he goes, "Oh, it's like $1,193. And by the time I was done the treatments, it was up to like $1,380. It was 26 months, so it was probably like $30,000.
Wow.
Yeah. Wow. And you know, there's people out there dealing with that too. Fortunately, I had a wonderful support group, and they did all the auctions for me and the evenings. I still have my shirt there, you know, Big Jim, Big Night, and all that stuff and everything. When they did the auction, I was so messed up from chemotherapy. I sat in the chair, didn't drink a beer. There was no fights, nothing.
Totally out of sorts.
That's what they laughed about it, eh? So it was probably the only time he ever went to a party. Walked in and walked out 3 hours later. The police weren't called.
Wow.
No, it was.
Speaking of,
but yeah, I know a couple of people that are dealing with it right now, besides Spencer. Unfortunately, they're not. It doesn't seem to have affected them the way it has Spencer. You know, they deal with it, but it's like, you know, for a week they're bad, then for a couple of months they're okay, but they have been diagnosed with it, and I guess it's just choosing not to get them is the thing. So.
Yep. No, absolutely.
Hopefully.
I'll tell you, speaking of support group, we have a great fan base here with our Canadian anglers who are participating in many bass tournaments, but namely the Johnsons. And I know it's a hot topic for you that you want to discuss because there's a secret bait that propelled them into excellence. Not to say that they weren't already, but propelled them into excellence this past weekend with the tournament that they were in. And I'm hoping that you have perhaps maybe one or two that you'll be able to show us. or at least how we could rig something similar to it.
Yeah, you sort of can't rig anything similar to it. That same little thing that we talk about all the time. That little ball of fluff.
The fluff.
That little ball of fluff that only weighs 3/32 of an ounce. It's got a steelhead hook in it, which is a wickedly strong hook. See, they suffered on the last day because they couldn't see the fish. If the water's calm, you can still see them. This isn't. You don't fish with this. You don't just go out and randomly cast this thing. You have to get it close to them when you see them. Because you got to remember, by the time you see them, they've already seen you long before that. I would assume in most cases.
Right.
You know, whether they care about you or not, you'll learn after a while to look at the fish if you can catch them. Like there's fish that, like we used to describe it as the guilty look.
Mm-hmm.
They just sort of give you one of these. Like I don't know what it is. It's really, really fun, but it's real. In fact, I showed it to Bruce Tufts one day. Fished at a tournament with him, and we saw some smallmouth swimming in a canal. I don't know where they were going, but they were decent ones. They were in the quart. They were probably 3-pound fish, which was 25 years ago that was huge.
Absolutely.
For smallmouth, and they were swimming by it. I looked at it and said, "Now we can't catch them. They got the guilty look." So here's the head of biology at Queen's, one of the world's foremost fish physiologists, and he looks at me and goes, "What?" Like I said, I can tell just by the way they're looking at me. He said, "So you actually look at fish and you know they look at you?" I said, "Yeah." So it was so funny. So I said, "Go ahead, you try to catch them." He did everything he knew. Now we didn't know about fluff back then. He did everything he knew. Nothing was going to work. They kept the distance. I think when we saw them, they were 12 feet away, 15 feet away. 10 minutes later, they were still 12, 15 feet away, and we had done everything. Bruce did everything he knew how to do. So we get down the end of the canal, we come back, and we're coming back out, and there's a boat coming in, and these guys are acting real coy and getting in the middle of it. They've seen these fish, and they think they're going to catch them.
Right.
And Bruce, as we go by them, Bruce looks at them and goes, "You ain't going to catch those three." And the guy goes, "Oh, you saw them?" And Bruce says, "Yeah, they got the guilty look."
Now, just so folks understand, if they don't, I would characterize it much like if a dog were to wet the carpet or go to the bathroom on, the basement mat. That look that they give you, where they cower and they're looking at you, but they don't want to acknowledge the fact that they did what they did, or they're not going to bite what you're throwing at them. But to go on with the fluff. So Is that a drop shot presentation, or are you?
No, it's a jig. It's a 3/32 ounce jig. Yeah, okay. It's a little jig head. Here, I'll get you.
Would a drop shot type presentation of this, or a variation of it, Jim, work or no?
Yeah, no, not really. It's a complete different thing. Different thing. That's a heavy one, and that's a 1/8 ounce head. That's the actual head we use. That's a different hook on it too. That's a slightly larger hook than what we would use. We've been so desperate for hooks here with COVID that we just sort of use whatever we can get. But the whole thing with it is you cast the jig out, and so many people said to me, "What are these guys doing?" When they watch them reeling, and they see the reel handle going like this. That's what they're reeling. And they reel it back to the boat, dead slow, give it the odd little pause, lift the rod a couple of inches, put the rod down a couple of inches. So this thing is just basically like this. It's nothing. The big fish the first day that Bernie Schultz caught, 6.2 pounds, smallmouth, came on one of mine. I sent them to a hotel room for him. He got them the day before. He talked about it today on Bassmaster Live while he was driving home.
Oh, geez, you're famous.
Hey, I was on the cover of Bassmaster. Swinging a fish in the boat on a crankbait, and everybody wanted to know where I was in the States. And I said, I wasn't in the States. I was in Cooch. You caught a fish in Cooch on a crankbait? This is how far fishing has come in Canada.
Holy smokes! No kidding.
People had no concept that you could fish a crankbait in Canada. Why did they even sell those? And now people run around with boxes of them.
Yep. Wow.
Just absolute boxes of them. But the whole and the other part of it is the line. It's 8-pound braid, and it's 6 or 8 pound fluoro. I'd say at least probably 8 to 10 feet of a leader, maybe 8 feet or maybe a little more. Some guys like to use a lot more. So if they have a fish on, the knot is already in the reel.
Right.
So that because smallmouths are just so powerful. But the rod is the whole deal. That's why that's what made the NRX 901s, 902s, 903s so famous. The rod was the deal because it allows you to cast at the distance, and it acts like a steelhead rod, like a bungee cord once they're hooked up. People, a lot of people haven't caught a 6-pound smallmouth. They have no concept how hard these things can pull, and how hard they pull in the big water.
Yeah.
They're fighting that current all their life. And the ones that, you look at the tail of a 5-pound smallmouth is almost the same depth as a 10-pound largemouth. That's where they get their power from. They're just such powerful fish. But you have to have the proper tackle. You have to at least have the proper technique, which means you're going to reel this thing back. You don't cast it out and jig it back. You can do that all day. You'll catch whatever you were going to catch on any jig. This is for catching fish that have seen you. They're looking at you. You're looking at them. Sometimes they're on beds. A lot of smallmouths in the big water in Lake Ontario and the St. Lawrence and that. It's got nothing to do with spawning. They swim up at 6 feet of water and sit beside a boulder, wait for something to chase. It's what they do. And a lot of times on the weekend, the guys, they would hook one and they'd be saying, "Oh, look at the big black one behind it." They got a 4.5 pounder on the line. There's a 5.5 swimming beside it, trying to eat the bait out of its mouth. They just watch it all. It's really, really exciting. But when you look at kids like the Johnsons, Gustafson, these guys out there, these guys have caught, the Johnson brothers at the time they've spent in Lake Ontario, they've probably caught 2,500 smallmouths over 5 pounds each in their life. You know what I'm saying? Most people that fish for their life don't catch 2,500 fish.
Yeah.
When it all gets down to it. You know what I mean?
Well, I dare say there's no way I've caught 2,500.
They're not going to fly-in camps and catching 60 walleyes a day. It's not that type of thing. They're doing this in a lot of heavily fished waters. A lot of these guys, and that's why you see like when the MLF came to the St. Lawrence, and what's his name? The other really good guy, Jacob Wheeler, broke the record for weight for one day. Of all the fish he caught. He caught 47 fish. Here's a guy that's one of the most winningest big-time tournament anglers, so he's got the gift. He's got the gusto. And he's absolutely blown apart because he caught 47 fish in a day. And, I have a lot of people call me, "Oh, we caught at least 100." And I don't respond to it anymore. I ask them, I said, "Do you have one of those little counters?" And they go, "As a matter of fact, I do." And I said, "Well, each time you use it, you have to set it to 0. You don't just fish all year and add them up and then,
There's the common sense.
No, it's Scotty. It is such a unique thing. When I first did it, my first actual experience with it, because I knew about it like a decade ago, but it never really caught me because I wasn't sight fishing smallmouths a lot at the time. I was still doing other things, and I didn't fish when they were spawning. I still have a little thing for that. I don't like to do it if I don't have to, especially now in the big water out here with the gobies. But the first time I ever did it with these little jigs, and you see one way off there, 30, 40 feet away, and you cast that jig by him and you reel it by after he's seen every other lure you've got. And it hits the water and you start to reel it, and all of a sudden they just go. And they start swimming. Like, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, I hear you. I hear you.
It's
I
like,
do have to ask. Bill has a great question in terms of the fluff, and I would imagine it's some kind of leech imitation. But what do you think the fish see when they see that fluff?
I have no idea. I mean, I have never. I'm not saying they're not there. I have never in my life seen a leech swimming around in Lake Ontario.
Well,
they may be there. They may be there. They may not. But fish eat spinnerbait, so I've never seen a spinnerbait swimming around. You know what I'm saying? No,
it's true.
We use rattle baits.
Yeah.
Well, there's nothing in nature goes through the water making that noise. You're just appealing to their senses. You know what I mean?
Oh, buddy, that's a mic drop right there. Good for you.
No, but it's true. Sure, it's funny, but it's not. It's intended to make a point, like the way it is.
It is true. No, you're 100%. But it does beg the question. Why something like that works so darn well in that kind of situation? Because at the end of the day, as you said, they could be spooked. They know you're there, and then you're fishing something that is just it tunes them in and makes them want to bite, regardless of all this nonsense and chaos that's going on around them.
Yeah, I've watched guys sitting on them with a little drop shot. You see them just twiggling that rod. They've got the drop shot right within easy striking distance of them. They're sitting there. They'll circle around. They'll look at it. That'll go on for 10 minutes. And I'm not necessarily talking bedding fish here now. I'm just talking shallow water fish. They are there. When you watch the Johnsons, their head looks like it's on a swivel. Corey was fighting a fish the other day. He's fighting it, and his head is like this the whole time.
Wow.
While he's fighting. And he's looking for other ones. Eh? They even left fish on the third day. They pulled up on fish and saw them. They put a GPS mark and said, I hope they're around here tomorrow. And then Corey said he'll never do that now because he brought in one fish on the third day that was I forget what the weight was. It was like 3 1/4, but he still had a really good weight. And he basically shook a fish off that was on a boulder.
Oh.
He didn't realize how big it was till he hooked it, and he slack lined it, let it go, and it got off, and he reeled his line in quick, and he put the GPS to go back to that fish the next day. And the next day when he went, because of the weather and the waves, couldn't see it.
Those big fish, once they get hooked, Jim, what are the chances you're going to hook them again?
5 minutes later.
Yeah, it's sometimes you'll see that.
A week later.
Yeah.
Yeah, you never know. A fish on a bed is a different thing. One swimming around in the open. I've seen them eat my lure. I've seen them eat a rattle bait. You're winding them back full tilt. Kaboom! You stick them. They jump. They shake it. It lands in the water. You start to reel it, and you see the fish come right back after it. He thinks he lost what he was eating.
Yeah.
He thinks what he was eating got away from him. I think in some cases. And once again, fish aren't the smartest things in the tool shed. It's
no, but I'll sometimes I got to give them a little bit of credit when you're fishing a spot and you're bringing in nothing but a wet lure time and time again, and all of a sudden you hook something, whether it be a walleye, whether it be a bass, what have you, and then all of a sudden there's 10 of them following this fish in. Because they know whatever it's got in its mouth, the minute that shakes it free or spits it out, it's mine.
I've seen that happen. I've seen guys lose a fish and go, not oh crap, something else. And 2 seconds later, you see them set the hook because one of the other ones eats it.
Yeah.
And I've seen guys fish in team tournaments. You don't get the net. You pick up your rod and you hook another one that's following, and you get them both in the net. I've seen guys do that a lot of times. I fished a tournament out of Kingston years ago with a buddy of mine called Glenn Carr. And I had like a 1 3/4 smallmouth, which, back then was a routine fish. It was like catching a 3 now, really. No. And there was 2 following it that were both probably 3+. Well, they were. Because I kept that fish, just let it swim around under the boat, holding the rod. He picked up his rod and caught them both.
Wow.
While the other one swam around. If we would have netted the other one and taken it out, they just split. But as long as the other fish is in there, they're following it around. There's a lot of little things like this, eh? But like I was saying, yeah, you watch guys, they're shaking that drop shot right there, that little worm. They're not touching it. They got nothing to do with it. They come look at it, go away, go away, go away. You let the breeze blow you back. You just drift away from them. Put the drop shot down, you pick up the marabou, throw it in.
That's awesome.
I've seen it too often.
That marabou, obviously you use brown. I see browns, blacks is go-to.
Black is really I'll put it to you this way. Corey Johnson phoned me after the first day of the tournament, and I hadn't talked to him for a while, and he says to me, "We're going to need some more fluff." And I said, like now, how am I going to get it to you? He said, no, we got enough left out of the last bunch for this. I said, how many do you want? He says, make 100 black, and maybe we'll try 20 avocados, which is a really, really plain, non-dis, well, here, I'll show you.
Like a dark green sort of army color. Yeah.
And when it gets wet, it darkens up a little bit.
Wow.
But yeah, no, it works. That's all there is to it. I had a guy call me the other day. He wants me to make. He says, "Can you make a spinnerbait with marabou on it?" I said, "Yeah, probably." He says, "I want to try it for smallmouths." They don't understand a bit about this just being nothing in the water.
Yeah.
It's not like you reel a bait past them and they just they go and get it. It's getting away. That response that they have to something moving fast. I don't know what makes them eat it. All I know is that they do, and I think it's because it looks like nothing in the water, and it's not just them. This spring here, when I was fishing out the back, I had one on a rod that I had 2 years ago at the Sportsman Show. It was still on the rod. I brought it down the back, and I could see a few crappies in the water. There was a little patch of weed. They were sort of moving out and in around it and whatever. And I threw over the little crankbait. Wouldn't touch it. The little weenie spinner baits I make, they wouldn't touch it. The bobber, they wouldn't touch it. Out goes the little black marabou, the fluff. Caught every one of them.
Wow.
There was about 5 of them in the little group right on the patch of weeds. I'd catch one, let it go, throw back over. Boom. Come and eat. Every one of them ate it. Every one.
Well, I sure hope you're prepared to tie a lot of fluff in the very near future, Jim, because now the cat's out of the bag. The secret is no longer a secret. Everybody knows that Jim is the master of fluff, and if you're looking to purchase,
it's so funny. Gerald Swindle comes on the stage with Mercer, and he comes up and he says, "Well, I never thought this had happened." He says, "I got fluffed by Gussie today," and he says, "I was on the water," and he says, "He give me one of them little black jigs." And he caught 2 or 3 5-pounders on it, and he just freaked. I got like 25 Facebook messages on. I think it was the second day. Chris Johnson was whacking them on it, one after the other. You'd see him try 2 or 3 different things, then he'd pick up the fluff and boom, he'd get them. And I mean, when they grab these big fish out and they're holding them in their arm the way they do, because when they get them by the belly, they just lay still for a second.
Yeah.
And he'd bring them out and be holding them, and the head would be right here. You'd see the black jig in the corner of the mouth. Are they your jigs? I got a lot of those. Is that the jigs you make for them? That's cool. See your stuff on the. I had 5 Bassmaster Elite guys fishing with my jigs here. So. And
that's somebody who used to fish at a very high level. So it says a lot when you say that, Jim, because at the end of the day, it's always a good time, and there's never a bad time to feel good that people believe in what it is that you're doing. So that's awesome. Jim, as always.
Mercer told me he gave Swindle my phone number so he could get some. Could you imagine getting a call from that wiener?
No.
He calls me and says, "This is Gerald Swindle." I said, "Gerald who?" We'll be off to a good start. Oh, waiting at the border when it opens. I know he has bad knees, so I just give him a kick in the knee.
Jim, as always, it always goes by fast, our half hour together, but thanks so much for joining us on Monday. In the meantime, if people are looking to see your magazine online, Just Fishing, the most recent summer
issue,
yeah, it's up and it's ready, and tell people how they can go and get their own copy.
www.justfishing.ca. Right, nice and simple. Appreciate it. The more it's looked at, better it gets, guys.
Right on. Well, that's fantastic, Jim. As always.
And in fact, Gussie has a thing about summertime tips in there.
Right on.
So go
Make sure you tune in and flip a page or two, and you're gonna learn something, as we always do every Monday.
Oh, you know what I'm going to do this weekend?
Are you fishing?
I'm going to MC the Ontario Bass Nation qualifier.
Nice. Right back at it. Good for you,
First
man.
time back on the road, so I'll have to sharpen up my tongue. I dug out I dug out a bunch of clothes there today, and they all fit. That's good. It's amazing for the last year and a half because I haven't been doing that. I live in shorts.
Yeah.
I work three quarters of the winter. I wear shorts unless it's like 30 below zero in a blizzard. I wear shorts. It's what I do. I don't get cold, so I don't need them, or else I wear a pair of sweatpants. And I'm going to have to start wearing real clothes again. I don't like this. Let's go back to gold. Oh, God.
Well, good luck with that. Safe travels in the brand new truck that's nicely decaled. And
yeah, I'll pick it up tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock.
She looks sexy, I tell you. So look for the big Shimano truck. It'll stick out like a very sore thumb, as they would say, but it's just a highlight and epic to see. It has Shimano on both sides, and of course, a big sexy guy in the driver's seat. Yeah, baby. Thanks so much for doing
good.
that.
You guys be safe. Have a great night. Okay.
Right on, buddy.
Bye.
As always, pleasure speaking to that man. It never gets old. It never gets boring. He always brings a wealth of information. And we just learned a lot about the fluff. So here's another word from our sponsor before we bring on Lawrence Gunther.
When it comes to Canadian food, we've got your back with flavors like lemon pepper, beer batter, campfire barbecue, lemon pepper dill, garlic butter and chives, and crispy Cajun. We've got a mix for every meal. Whether you're serving East Coast shrimp, West Coast salmon, succulent walleye, chicken wings, or veggies, we've got you covered. Coat your food in outdoor flavors. Available online or at these fine retailers.
Good evening, Lawrence. How you doing tonight?
I'm doing well, man.
Fantastic. Just back fresh from the ball game. How'd the boy do?
Oh, they lost, but it's so cool, right? Like after not playing last year, it was so great to get him back and the league to get going again this year. This is his fourth year playing. He missed 2020, so it would have been his fifth, but he loves baseball and he's always practicing. And, he never rubs it in that I can't play baseball with him, right? But I'll remind him someday that when he was 5 years old, he had a big Nerf bat and a big squishy Nerf baseball. And I would stand him in front of the RV and I would throw the ball at him and he would swing at it. And if it came back and hit me, I didn't care because it was just a Nerf ball anyways. But, I got him into baseball, right? I got him into baseball at a very young age. So he doesn't remember that shit, though. He doesn't remember that.
That's cool. That's cool. That's fantastic. And the fact that it's a team effort, you go there, your wife does the play-by-play while your son's doing what I think that dude, that's so awesome.
I keep track of the score. I keep track of the outs and the all of that stuff, right? So I'm the data guy. She's the color commentary, and a lot of the color commentary says, "Oh no!"
Kind of some of the commentary that we'll hear during the CFN live. Just kidding. Bluefish Canada has been busy publishing their latest edition of the news.
Yes,
and it's intriguing to find out. Some of the references that are made in regards to Lake Nipissing and the new regs. Tell us a little bit about that.
So Nipissing, right? This is a lake that's so popular. You can get there from Toronto. You can fish it. It's very accessible. It's right off the main highway. So, in the wintertime, you can there's thousands of ice huts out on Lake Nipissing that you can rent and people bring their own. So it's year-round pressure. You also have the Nipissing First Nations community, and they've been, relying on that lake for food and for livelihood, for trade for, thousands of years, and they're back at it. So they've got their gillnet fishery going for a moderate livelihood. They've got their food and social and ceremonial fishery going. So, it's been getting a little bit of a shit kick in the last dozen or so years. The walleye population is getting, a little depressed. So here's the thing, right? You got the Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry and all the other things you call it now. I don't even remember. There's energy in there. There's a whole bunch of things. They've just rejigged that whole name of that. And, but they make the deals with the Nipissing First Nations community about their commercial and FSC fishery, their food, social, and ceremonial fisheries, and their moderate livelihood fisheries. They cut the deals with them on that. and they cut the deals with the anglers on the regulations for angling. But you'd think they'd bring them to the table, right, and say, "Oh, here's what's going on. Here's what's going on over there. You should." We all know what's going on over there, and they all know what's going on, over here, because they see the ice huts and the boats, and we see them and their gill nets. So everyone knows, and everyone has ideas of what's going on, and everyone's pointing fingers. But that's all we know is to point fingers, right? Because we don't have any data.
Yeah, and it's amazing because if you do fish that body of water, you'll find, like I did. I had the pleasure of being out with Christina and Renee Fortin, who is a well-known angler in that area. And the one thing that we were doing nothing but a fun day out on Lake Nipissing, but what it turned into was a bit of an FYI that there has to be some change to the regs when it comes to Lake Nipissing, because it seems as if our First Nations are targeting the same size walleye as the recreational anglers when it comes to the slot limit. So what would end up happening is you'd catch whole whack of fish that didn't meet the slot limit that you would have to throw back. Normally that's not an issue, but when you're having to target these fish in 40 or 40 plus feet of water, I get concerned as a walleye lover. We shouldn't be targeting fish that deep, but unfortunately that's where they are. And it's hard to tell on a fish finder what size of fish it is that you're targeting. But as it turned out, I think we were just shy of 100 fish that we caught that day, and Christina managed to catch the one keeper.
Wow.
And and so Renee said, Scotty, if there's anything you can do, it'd be great to do some kind of segment on the need to see change, to invoke some kind of change. And I would like to say this reg-based revisiting that's gone on is certainly the first steps in understanding the need for change.
One of the regulations they proposed was a slot limit for walleye that's so tiny, right? It's so tiny, it's like within an inch and a half, right? So you can keep fish, but they have to be, I think between 16 and 17 inches or something like that. Like, it's the tiniest slot size I've ever heard of in my life. And the big ones go back, the little ones go back, and I think, what's going on with that? Like, why is that so narrow? And then you go to the Nipissing First Nations website, and they've got a lot of information there about, their own fisheries. And they say, yeah, we've changed our net size and our gill nets. We went from a 3.5-inch net size to a 3 3/4-inch net size. So what the hell does that all mean? No one's explaining this to the other side. No one's explaining what's going on. And yet, you got the government dealing with them, and then they, turn around and deal with us, and deal with them, deal with us. And they're not explaining. They're not sharing any information whatsoever about what's going on. And that's not helping. That's not helping build trust, build a mutually beneficial fishery, right? I mean, that's what everyone wants, is something that's mutually beneficial that will last, and not this, you're taking all the fish, and they're saying, no, you're taking all the fish. That's not helping.
Well, no, and from what I saw, it seems as if we're taking the same size fish as our First Nations, and to me, all that basically ends up happening, and you could see it just in the results, is that you have a whole bunch of fish that are really small, and then some fish that are big. And to me, it goes completely against the grain of thought that you would want to target a larger fish, but that is unfortunately the fish that they want you to keep, because they seem to think that there's a large population of smaller fish. Well, there is, and I'm not going to deny that because I saw it firsthand.
Mm-hmm.
But, the fact that we have to target them at such depths, barometric or barotrauma is a definite issue, Bill, and thanks so much for bringing that up. And and not normally, so we shouldn't normally target walleye deeper than 30. 35 feet. Tops. But unfortunately, that's where the fish are, and as I said, it's just sending a message to anglers that it's more important to make sure we're sustaining the net catches than we are the recreational catches, and of course that creates a huge divide in itself. So
Oh yeah, it does, and a lot of mistrust, a lot of a lot of bad feelings, but you're absolutely right, and then this slot limit, when you make the slot size so small, and then you have to wade through, like you guys did, 100 fish to get one keeper, and then you're doing this, and I've seen this as well in catch photograph release walleye tournaments where they'll just. You can do that. You can wade through, 50 fish to keep, your 5 biggest ones on photographic record, but you never photograph the ones that are suffering with bear trauma, right? You just let them go, and you're not taking pictures of them, or you take pictures of them before they develop the signs of bear trauma, and then you let them go. So I've seen guys sitting over schools of walleye that are 50 feet down and just sorting through them, trying to up their 5 biggest by an inch. And just one after the other, and they're going back with their big cookie eyes back into the water. And you think, boy, you think this catch and release, catch photograph release tournament is a benefit, but not when these guys are sitting over fish 50 feet down and doing it. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, I totally agree. And as I said, it's unfortunately something that we have to do a better job of informing.
Yeah,
the mass anglers out there. Jason BARNUCZ says something. It's apropos. When it comes to improving a walleye fishery, there are no easy answers. And when it comes to Lake Nipissing, it is a very difficult territory to even tread lightly on, because you're dealing with some very strong opinions, whether they be recreational or our First Nations. And to try and appease both at the same time, historically has not always gone well. And I'm hoping that we're able to reach out to the First Nations and understand what their needs are, so that we can somehow come to a compromise, so that we can still have our needs met as recreational anglers. And of course, not to mention, there's a few great lodges up that way too that count on these fish. And the fact that they have to send their customers out in waters that are plus 40 feet plus to target these fish. I mean, I don't know. I see we're doing a lot of harm to that fishery. And
you have to catch 100 before you can keep one for your fish fry, right? And, it's a little bonkers. There's a lot of people who want to make a moderate livelihood. A lot of people who, it's tourism up there, right? It's all about the fishery. It's not the beaches. It's not, it's not the artisans. It's the fishing. And that's why people go up there. That's what the tourism is based on. All the cabins you can rent, the ice shacks in the winter, the fishing lodges, the guides, all of that stuff. It's all about tourism. So, another part of the regulations is they want you to keep a bunch of small pike and maybe one big trophy. So what's that all about? Like, here you are, you got a slot limit on walleye where you're letting the juveniles go and the breeders go, and they do a full flip, 180 on the northern pike. Go keep the small ones, keep 4 small ones, and keep one big breeder as a trophy or something. Like, do they not want pike in that lake anymore? Are they worried that the pike are going to start to take over from the walleye, and maybe they're eating the walleye? Like, what's going on with that? Are they trying to get rid of the pike out of that lake, by putting the harvest on the juveniles and the breeders? So that's a little perplexing.
Yeah. Well, at the end of the day, absolutely. Anytime that you're targeting large fish is definitely concerning, or encouraging, the removal of large fish. Because, let's face it, there are breeders, but there is probably some science to suggest that these large pike do eat a good number of walleye. Do we have a population up there that is sustainable enough to warrant, just massive pike running around eating these walleye, when we have First Nations considerations and recreational considerations? As I said, it's a powder keg, and I don't think, as Jason mentioned, there's an easy answer to this, especially when you have such strong views associated with it. So I don't envy them with this. But the fact that they recognized that change was needed was certainly a step in the right direction, because of the current format, to me, was just not working.
So here's a couple more examples of the regulation they want to change. They want to introduce a pre-spawn bass fishery, right? So you have your pre-spawn catch and release bass fishery. Then you have a period where there's no fishing for bass during the spawn period. And then you have your post-spawn bass fishery with retention. So, and they're saying, look, there's the bass in Lake Nipissing is a totally underutilized, undervalued resource. Switch over, like try the bass. You know, they're there. I mean, there's a Ontario Bass Nation has a club there on Lake Nipissing. They've had one of their qualifiers on Lake Nipissing. There's bass in that lake. There's no doubt about it. But you know, to think, well, maybe we can switch some of the pressure from the walleye anglers over to bass and take some of that pressure off the walleye. So that's an interesting little, you know, again, why are they doing this? Why do they want to take pressure off the walleye by anglers? Is it to rebuild the fish stock? Is to give the fish stock some breathing room to recover? You know, we don't know because they're not sharing that information. They're just saying, hey, here's an underutilized fish stock that you guys should be fishing for. Who would have known? Good times ahead, everybody. But that's not the full reason. They're not being completely candid with us. They're not being completely transparent with us about that.
Well, no, and you know, perhaps it could be viewed so many different ways, but yeah, no, absolutely. I just at the end of the day, I think everybody understands that the root cause and the root issue is the walleye, and how we basically react to that situation could be, as you said, viewed as not being transparent, not getting the real deal, the full goods. But you know, at the end of the day, as Jay has mentioned, Lake Nipissing data is showing that bass it's one of the best bass fisheries in Ontario. Perhaps maybe as good as Lake Simcoe, which that's some pretty hefty accolades right there.
Yeah, absolutely. The last one I want to mention is the muskellunge. You know, they want to introduce maybe a 54-inch retention size, and you know, nothing under 54 inches. People quite often catch muskie on that lake, and they think they're pike, and they keep them, and they're keeping 30-inch, you know, 40-inch muskie, thinking they're pike. So this would sort of send a clear signal, you know, hey, if you get caught with a muskie under 54 inches, you know, you're going to be in trouble. But I had this conversation with MNRF senior biologists and fishery advisors 8-9 years ago when they were proposing the same catch limit on the Ottawa River of 54 inches, and they got it through. And I said, why do you even have like a retention? You know, why? And it finally came out. They said, well, the tourists, you know, the tourism operators, the guides, they're afraid that if they don't let their clients keep a trophy fish to mount, they won't come. They'll think, my goodness, if I can't keep any fish, there must be the fish stock must be in trouble. The population must be down. They're not letting us keep any. I'm not going to go if that's the case. Or I'm not going to be able to keep a trophy and bring it home. So they're still saying that they're still putting out this, you know, 8 years later, you can't keep a muskie unless it's over 54 inches or over, which is also a bit weird because those fish almost always, if you look at the fish consumption advisories by the Ontario government, there's nowhere in Ontario where they're recommending you eat a 54-inch muskie or bigger, right? There's just no way, because these are old fish. They've bioaccumulated a lot of nasty things in their bodies. You start dining out on those, you know, once or twice a week, you know, you a portion out of a big 54-inch, you could spread that out over a lot of weeks. And that's not going to go down well. That's not going to be healthy for you. So it's certainly not for food that they're suggesting you keep these big fish. It purely is trophy. It's purely a fear of loss of tourism. But I don't know if that's still the case, you know, Scotty. I mean, do you really think that people would stop fishing for muskie if you couldn't keep one over 54 inches?
I don't think so myself. I'd like to think that most muskie anglers are conservationists at heart. Certainly the muskie community that I met with Muskies Canada during the Muskie Odyssey would be that group that you know, they certainly wouldn't encourage, nor would they themselves keep a muskie of that size. Perhaps maybe to wall mount, but with all the fiberglass molding going on right now, I don't really see the need. You get good measurements on these fish, and I'll tell you, the likenesses that come out of these fiberglass replicas are phenomenal. So yeah, no, I'd have to agree. And the other thing that I'd like to bounce off you is as an idea of implementation in order to change the mindset. You know, a lot of people think that when they go to these places that they got to take something home, right? Like we got to fill our coolers. We got to make sure we're taking something home. And something that I stick by, you know, Horwood Lake Lodge is a lodge that there's always fish. And you're always going to catch fish, and you're always going to enjoy eating fish. And I remember talking to Warren. He says, you know, we had one good day, and he says, you're going to take some of that home with you. And I said, absolutely not. I refuse to take fish home for the simple fact that it's just I'm here to enjoy the fishery. I'm here to enjoy a meal of fish. I don't need to take it home with me. That's why I come here is to enjoy it. Taking it home in a cooler, freezing it, whatever, it's not the same as fresh. So, you know, really the only place that I can think of that I would freeze walleye if I ever caught it and took it home with me would be Lake Erie. I can't see myself catching a walleye and taking it home with me in I don't know, in an effort to eat it later. Yeah. I'm there at Horwood to enjoy it, the odd fish fry. And if we could get that kind of mindset in all of our American anglers that come across the border and enjoy our fishery, if we could get that in their mindset that don't have to take something home, enjoy it while you're here, it'll be twofold. You know, not only will they want to come more often, but they'll understand the need to protect the fishery in which they enjoy. I don't know. That's just my idea.
I think you're right on, and if you look at a lot of the lodges now, you know, on these remote lakes or the fly-in fishing trips, they're not allowing anyone to fly home with coolers of frozen fish anymore. That's just not on. You can have a traditional shore lunch of walleye if you choose, or something else, but you're not leaving with fish. And it's just because they realize that if everyone just kept leaving with fish, at some point the quality of fishing goes down, and then you're in a 10-15 year rebuilding process, and the reputation. And in today's era of social media, you know, you just need a few anglers going up there and saying, man, I had a crappy time, and I paid all this money, came up here, caught, you know, very few fish, very few keepers, and blah, blah, blah. And next thing you know, no one's going, right? Because that stuff spreads like wildfire. So it's more important than ever to maintain your reputation as a quality fishery. And how do you do that? Just stop letting people eat them all.
And 100% right. So what's worse? That you went up to a lodge, spent an entire week there and caught very few fish, or you went up to a lodge, caught a lot of fish, managed to eat a good helping every night, but weren't allowed to take any home. What's worse? To me, spending all that money to get up there and not catching anything is far worse than not being able to take anything home.
I agree. And you know you're doing it for conservation. You know you're going to be able to do that for years to come. To go back to that lodge and bring your children, your grandchildren, and they're going to have the same experience as you did. I mean, how wonderful is that?
Amen.
Yeah.
Now, on your Feel the Bite segment.
I got one more thing to deal with Nipissing, buddy.
Sorry.
So here's my end on this story for now, because I'm not going to let this go. We're going to keep looking and keep talking. And I'm hoping at some point, you know, we'll get a round table going where we'll have the Nipissing First Nations and the angling community and the conservationists and the other stakeholders, the tourism operators, the guides, all of them at the table sharing information. And why is this important? Because if the regulations keep pushing anglers to catch and release, right, more and more, like the pre-spawn bass fishery, or this tiny slot limit for walleye, or a slot limit now for pike, and a small window for muskie, you know, more and more catch and release, very little opportunity for retention, and the walleye population continues to go down. And more this sort of focus on catch and release for angling community and less on retention. At some point, you know, we hear this quite often from First Nations communities. They don't believe in catch and release fishing. To them, it goes against their values. And if they have, a claim to be responsible for a region in terms of what sort of conservation measures are in place in that region, they could just say, look, we're not comfortable with people catch and release fishing. You're torturing the fish, blah, blah, blah. We want that to stop. And you see this on the West Coast now, right, with the salmon. We want that to stop. So then we've worked our way right out of the game, right? Little by little, we've been whittled down from retention to catch and release. And then next thing you know, that card will get played. And then what? Then, then you're in a situation where the only thing you can do is you can go and help harvest some fish and you can pay for the privilege, but that's it, right? That's it. And that we don't want to get there. We don't want to get there.
No, absolutely not. And, as I said, opening the door to the potential of that is terrifying enough, because at the end of the day, it is something that can you imagine, Lawrence? Like, let's just take a moment. Can you imagine our lives without angling?
I know. And you're in Germany, where you're only allowed to catch, 4 fish. And when you caught your 4 fish, you're done. And then you better know, you got to take those home. You got to report the fish that you caught. Then you got to pay to have them replaced. And then you don't get to fish again, because now you're only allowed to catch maybe 10 in a year. So the numbers of opportunities to go out and catch fish, right? I mean, that's where that's all heading. And there's examples of this in Germany and other places in Europe where that's exactly where it went to. We don't want to go there. I mean, I'm not against harvesting fish. I think it's something we also have as part of. Yeah, we're not. It's not a food security thing. No one's going to starve to death if they can't catch a fish necessarily, but it's also a social thing, and it's also a ceremonial thing. Who doesn't think that bringing home a fish and having the family gather around and with your children and clean that fish and make a meal out of that fish that they caught, that's totally a ceremony and a social thing with your friends and sharing that. Absolutely it's important to all of us, right? And more and more
100%.
No.
Jeanette, it breaks my heart to even think about it. But, as I said, I'm a big proponent of catch and release. I love educating anglers on the need for that, especially when it comes to walleye. But it encompasses most fish, not all fish, but most fish. Yeah. Any catch and release practice is good for the fishery. But unfortunately, if it becomes a completely catch and release fishery, then, as Lawrence has said, it breaks my heart to what it could possibly open the door to, and we certainly don't want to entertain the thought of not having angling because we have, stuck our foots in our mouths. But it is something that needs a lot more discussion, and I'm glad the First Nations and some of the bipartisan groups and voluntary groups are getting together and discussing some of the issues on Lake Nipissing, and hopefully everybody sort of carries the same clout, that not one group carries more clout than the other up there, and everybody gets equal say.
If everyone comes in, and recognizes that we all have a lot of shared values, right? We all want to be able to catch some fish and eat them. We all want to be able to exercise our rights to fish, make a moderate livelihood, all of that stuff. We all share those same values, and we all want it to last. We all want it to be able to carry on down the road, right? No one's arguing that, we're all in alignment on that stuff. So we just need to figure out how to do it and that it makes sense. And, and maybe they don't agree exactly how we do it. We don't agree exactly how they do it. But in the end, the results are the same. We all want the same thing.
Absolutely.
So, hey, so feel the bite, right?
Just before you go on, sorry, not to interrupt, but Mike Howard, you've got some great comments here.
Yeah,
absolutely. When it comes to eating fish, make sure you're catching what you're going to eat. And this idea of stuffing your freezers, that mentality's got to stop. That is an old mindset. And we've got to change that. But I will say this: a catch and release fishery, does that mean no more licenses? Well, if I were to answer that question, I'll let you answer it, Lawrence. There's no way we could possibly go down the road of not having licenses, because those licenses pay for more things than we even know about.
They're not paying to pave roads, so that license fee is going to pay for the conservation officers and all of that, right? The science and the research. So
exactly. So the fact that the idea of no more licenses because it becomes a complete catch and release fishery, I'd like to say, is a foregone conclusion. But It is an interesting concept that you bring up, Mike. Anyway, feel the bite.
Maybe for some species like carp, you could have a no license, fishery, right? And just have it something for the family, and people could just go and do it, right? Maybe there are some species where you could just waive the license, but that's a point. And how much demand is there for that? Is it holding up people from going fishing? I'm not sure.
Yeah.
So feel the bite. So I buy Quebec license every year because when I take my family to Quebec, they're fishing under my license. So we can harvest fish just for one license holder, but we can all take part in that harvesting exercise as a family. It's a wonderful approach, right? To taking your family. I mean, here we have Family Fishing Day and National Fishing Week and things like that in Ontario and across Canada. But, my wife needs her fishing license in Ontario, and my kids, when they get a certain age, they need their fishing licenses. So it starts to add up, right? It starts to add up if we want to go fishing, as a family. And it doesn't happen every weekend, but, it's nice when it does. I really enjoy it. But so we go to Quebec and we're fishing there, and there's lots of great lakes for bass fishing, but I have them all fishing with barbless octopus hooks, with and Z-bend hooks and things like that with Senkos and stuff, and they love it, They love the fact that when the fish are brought in, we can just literally shake them off the hook beside the boat, and the fish are going back. It's so slick and easy, and if someone gets and I said more importantly, if we hook each other, the day's not over, right? We don't have to go to your emergency room.
So that, you don't think about that when you're using them, but you're 100% right. And, we see enough Facebook videos where folks are getting their hooks caught inside their arms, their legs, whatever. There was one in particular just recently that I don't know how he didn't hook his eye, to be honest with you, but yeah, you're 100% right.
Yeah, barbless hooks are the perfect solution for family fishing events. And then you got like my 15-year-old daughter who gets her phone out and starts reading me crap off the PETA website, right, about do fish feel pain? And my wife just steps in and says, where are you getting that from? She goes, PETA. And she goes, oh, honey, that's all fake news. PETA is not known for representing, news that's of any quality, right? But this is so important. Where are our kids getting their news from? And some of these, anti-fishing organizations are really good at putting myths out there that are fake news to achieve their goals. And to them, they think, well, we're lying, but the goal, the mission sanctions the lie. Because we need to stop fishing, we need to stop hunting, we need to stop farming animals, right? Anything that involves, the harvesting of meat protein, they're against it. And I'm sure they're even against me using a guide dog. There's more and more concern about that. Like as a guide dog user, I have to be so careful, right? When I'm walking around, there's no more choke collars, like they had 35 years ago for training dogs, and there's just the rules around how you work with your dog and how the dogs are trained has evolved so much in the 35 years I've been using dogs, and I've had to evolve with it. But even then, just the fact that I have a guide dog in the harness, sometimes, I'm in a market there in the middle of downtown Ottawa. And it's happened where people have said to me, in the wintertime, you shouldn't have the dog out, in the cold. Where's the dog's sweater? You shouldn't have the dog in a harness. That's mean. Things like that, right? You hear that now. You hear that. So, yeah, there's people who have pretty bizarre ideas about, things like fishing and animals. So you really need to make sure your kids are getting good information and the right kind of information. And unfortunately, teachers are also, putting these videos in schools. My 11-year-old grandson, on an online course, watched Seaspiracy, right? He loves fishing. He said, Grandpa, I don't want to fish anymore. I said, why? And it finally came out that he watched Seaspiracy. His teacher let them watch it. I mean, that's one really graphic, bloody documentary. That's, dolphins being eviscerated. Oh, they made it as nasty as they could, and their teachers are giving this to kids in grade 6.
It is, and again, you touch a line that is unfortunately hard to walk. Because in a lot of cases, hunting and fishing are very similar in their approach. But when it comes to fishing, there was a lot more hunting going on than fishing per se in that documentary. And I will say this too, some of it was depicted in a way that would be ideal for catching drama. I will say this though. I almost, and I didn't chuckle out of laughter. I chuckled out of sheer I just want to say that my feeling for the producer, the one who was writing the story, telling the story, I could feel his complete I don't even know what feeling you would call it, but when they started harvesting those whales, and he was thinking that he was going to what was supposed to be a sustainable whale harvest, and he gets that experience of watching what was going on in front of him, and that hopeless feeling of, oh my word, what have I just walked into? And as I said, I didn't chuckle out of humor. It was more a sense of, I could just imagine the hopeless feeling that author had during that moment. But yes, very, very interesting documentary. It certainly makes you think. Certainly it makes me, I'll tell you what it did. It certainly made me appreciate what I have here in Ontario and in Canada, in our waters, and what I've been able to enjoy for the 52 years that I've been on this planet. I will never ever consider myself one of those individuals that they spoke about and were dramatizing. But at the end of the day, you're right. You enough kids like that see that, and we're not going to have to worry about telling them about catch and release. We're going to have to worry about telling them that it's okay to fish.
Yeah, I know. I have to work with my grandson now. Like, he loves fishing, right? He loves fishing. He has for years, and now he doesn't want to fish just because of that one documentary. And so so we have to start the education process over again. Amen. And because he didn't get all sides of the story, he got a very, very grim and incredibly, horrific side of a story, right? And you're right. It's not like a lot of that stuff was wrong, but the way they put it all together sends a message that all of us are put in that basket, right?
And that's shock and awe. That's for TV drama, for Hollywood movies. It's not me. Like that's not a good representation of the kind of angler that I am. Not to say that I am trying to paint them all as bad anglers with that brush, because really, in a lot of cases, some of them don't know any different. That's their culture. That's their tradition. That's their heritage. This is all they know. So it's a global education that's required in order to reverse the mindset that says, although you've been doing this for years, doesn't necessarily make it right. We just got to educate them on how it's wrong and how we could better our fisheries by changing a few things. So.
Yep.
Anyway, man. Dude, I greatly appreciate you making it. As I said, I'm sorry that the boy lost, but I'm glad that he did well. But more so than that, I'm really glad you made it, because as always, you get us thinking, you get us talking, and I appreciate you doing this every Monday with us.
It's my pleasure, and I really appreciate the opportunity, my friend. Thank you for having me.
Right on, buddy. You take care of yourself.
Thanks.
And here, just before we bring on Jay BARNUCZ, here is yet another word from his sponsor. And I got to find it. You think I'd be on the ball by now. I think Chris McCoy said, your transitions are so much better. Well, here's a case in point where it's not.
The fear of failure is failure itself. The world of science rewards the ones who are willing to try and fail. Because without the courage to embrace failure, ideas remain ideas. But with that courage to fail and to learn, ideas can change the world.
Jay BARNUCZ, how you doing, my friend?
I think I found a signal.
Attaboy. You worked very, very hard. You were coming in and out. I was seeing blip, blip,
Yeah,
blip.
I was making my rounds in the hotel here. I think I found a.
Oh.
You might hear the odd luggage cart go by, but we're good.
Oh, that's fantastic. No worries. Listen, on behalf of all of us here at CFN, I know it's been well documented on Facebook, but it has not been an easy go for you in the last week or so. And our hearts and thoughts were with you and your family on what you were dealing with. Not to mention a good friend of yours that passed as well. But as I said, it speaks to the kind of person you are and the kind of community we are, that everybody, sent out salutations and their condolences and what have you, and you managed to find your way back here Monday, and we love you for it.
Yeah, thanks everybody. It's been, what do you do? Like, this is kind of life, and things happen. And my grandfather, he was 94 years old. He went into the hospital for hip surgery. He had a fall. But why did he fall? Because he was vacuuming, because he wanted to help. Like, he would cut the grass if Trevor didn't cut it for him. You know what I mean? Like, the guy was just 10 years ago when I was renovating my house, he was over there at 84 years old with his level, helping me make sure the studs were straight, because he was a carpenter his whole life. Like, the guy lived a full life. And so, and right up until he passed, he was still living at home, full mind. Like, my other grandparents passed, and they went through stages of dementia and things like that, which is tough. Right. And so my grandfather, like, right to the end, man, right to the end, And, my buddy Kevin, so they actually both passed away on the same day. I posted Kevin's obituary today, but, he's only 2 years older than me, man. I'm 46, he's 48. And that's a tough one. He's got young family. I don't want to get into what happened, but all I'm going to say is if you have things to talk about with people, you reach out to people. Don't let the darkness get you. And we've all been in dark places in our life, and you don't have to be there alone. So
it's so true, Jay, and I'm glad you bring that up, because at the end of the day, the one thing that I am very proud of our community is that we do reach out and help people. I mean, there's been several people that have come to me that are suffering, and you talk them through it, you validate it, but at the end of the day, I think the most important thing that people forget to realize, that just listening is so powerful. That is half the medication in itself right there. Just listen. Because people sometimes are so in a hurry to talk about themselves. Listen to somebody just for 5 minutes, and honestly, it'll make all the difference in the world.
It's true. A lot of people don't know my backstory, but my parents separated when I was 15. Early in life, there was it was kind of been a rough go at home. Things are great now. Like, it's funny how time can kind of heal things, but I started fishing hard at a young age. That was my therapy. I didn't fish to catch fish. I got suspended for 3 days during the salmon run. And when the vice principal asked me where I was, I said I went fishing, and he slammed his fist on his desk and he said, "Don't lie to me, Mr. BARNUCZ. Don't lie to me. Tell me where you were." I said, I was fishing. I went fishing. And I'm not telling kids to cut class, but when I was 16 years old, there was just days where I'm like, I had too much going on up here, and I'm like, I need a break, and I really didn't reach out to others at the time. I just went fishing. That's what I did. And, I do what I do now, and I love fishing for so many other reasons, but that's really why. And even today, like, even not today, but even in this time, I still look for fishing as my release, as my zen. Like, I'm going to go tomorrow night, the Saugeen. We're back up in the Saugeen area, and the water's a bit high. Doesn't look great for the smallmouth, but I'm going to go sit on a boulder tomorrow night, man. I'm going to try it because I can, So with the forest fire smoke and all, dude, it was crazy today.
Unbelievable.
Crazy.
I couldn't, driving home, I'm like,
yeah.
Am I in Alberta? Am I in BC? Like, I've never seen this like this before.
I said so I'm working with 2 summer students and our technician, 3 girls. We're on the North Saugeen River today. We're pulling seine nets. And I look up and I'm like, that's a blue sky, but it's all this haze, like a fog, but it wasn't foggy. Like, I could just feel it. Like, it wasn't a fog, like, because there wasn't that humidity, and I'm like, that's got to be forest fire smoke. And then I went on Twitter, and I think it was Gord Ellis posted a link, and it's called like firesmoke.ca, and it actually is like a radar, like a moving radar, but it's actually forest fire smoke across Canada. You can zoom in on where you are, and it's crazy how much I'm in Kincardine, man, and how much we're getting it here. And if you look at the color pattern, like we're at the low end. I'm like, I can't imagine being up in Fort Francis or some of the CFN folks like out in the prairies. Oh my God. Like, didn't Bill post a Simpsons meme, like it tastes like fireplace, like it was Ralph Wiggum? Like,
dude, that's what I was doing when I came out of the building, and I'm on my way home. I mean, I was sitting there, I was sniffing. I'm like, can I smell the burn? No, I can't smell the wood, but
no.
This is definitely smoke haze. Like this is not that photochemical smog that we deal with. This is smoke.
Yeah. It wasn't that. I'm used to that. Like I work a lot in the Southwest, like Essex and Chatham, and I'm used to in the summertime when you get the hot days, you get that green, soupy smog. You can see it across Erie, and especially on the calmer days. And it kind of had that look to it. Now I didn't have the odor where we were here, so it's funny because you're at home this week in Brampton, right? So it's like, so I'm up in Kincardine. The fires are up north. It's like it's spiraling around, right? So there was more smoke today where you are than where I was, because the jet stream's like swinging it around the other way. It's crazy how much smoke there is, though.
Incredible.
So
as I said, my thoughts and prayers go out with these families that are dealing with it. We had that one-off that happened in Barrie where, tornadoes went through and did all that damage. But, the amount of damage that's being done by these forest fires, I know that our firefighters out in these forest fires are they're running on fumes, trying to keep up with it. And it's now almost across Canada. It's not just in BC, but holy smokes.
Well, this record-setting heat, but, to bring it back to fishing, I've been talking with a couple of friends the last week. Dude, fishing's been a real hit and miss. Like these weather patterns, these fronts. So usually in the summertime, you'll get a typical front for 3 days. Like you'll get like a high pressure, and it'll swing up for 3 days, kind of gradual. Then about every third day you get a drop. And then you get a thunderstorm, a cold front comes in for a day, and then you get 2 days of and it doesn't have to be hot, nice weather. It just has to be nice, stable weather. And man, it's been like every other day. Like, and the rain we're getting, like the rivers, Walkerton, talking with some of the guides that I know up here, because I like to reach out when I'm working. I want to reach out to some of the guides that work on these rivers, and I'm like, what is a typical summer low? For example, like I don't want to sample when the water's high because then it biases my sample. Like I want to kind of be there, and when the water's lower, I can fish my neck. I'm pulling a seine net, like old school, dude, old school. And I asked them, typical summer low in Walkerton is like 8 to 9 CMS, cubic meters per second. Well, in Walkerton right now, like it's been above 10. In fact, it's been like 12 to 15, and it was as high as 30 last week. We're only up here because it's going to probably hit 15 CMS tomorrow, which is doable. So we're going to be canoeing the Saugeen tomorrow between Walkerton and Paisley. But it's been touch and go with all the high water. It's crazy, man.
Oh, and you know what? Where there is high water, there's lots of low water. As I said, I don't know what it is in the headwaters of the Credit right now, but Island Lake is I think anyway at an all-time low. Certainly other places around there, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, they're down, 6-7 feet. So it is an anomaly where you are seeing all kinds of extremes. And the one thing that I will say is those fair weather, blue sky days, we don't seem to get a lot of them this year in particular.
Yeah.
It's either hot, humid, or a cold front goes through and it's 19 degrees.
So
and
I got to tell you a story about Trevor and I, what we did last week. You might like this. Some people might not like this story, but I did this kind of on purpose, and some might think this is a bit abusive, but I'll tell you what I did. So we have a small boat, and Trevor really wanted to go fishing last Monday, and with OPA passing and stuff, I'm like, we moved the funeral up to Wednesday because My grandmother wanted Father Al, and Father Al retired. Family stuff, dude. So I'm like, I'm working to get Father Al back, and I'm working on that. So it got moved up to Wednesday. So I'm like, well, okay, let's go fishing Monday night. So we go fishing. We take our little boat down to Booth Harbor, or near Booth Harbor, near St. Williams. And we get down there, and like the flags are pretty much straight, and the windsock is straight. And it's coming out of the east. And I don't care about this fish from the east, bite the least, all that crap. But when you fish Long Point Bay from the east wind, there's no shelter. Like, there's nowhere out of it. You are in the wind everywhere you go. So I took him fishing, and we get out there, and because he wanted to go, he was insistent. We fished for 20 minutes. He goes, I want to go in. I go, dude, I just paid for a boat ramp. You got to tough it out 2 hours. 2 hours you're fishing. We didn't catch a fish, dude. We were out there. I should have brought a drift sock. We tried to just to stand in the boat and throw chatterbaits and stuff. There was like 3-4 footers. Like, when we went to move spots, Trevor's hanging on to like both gunnels, and I'm like, who wants to be a bass pro now, fair weather fisherman? Like, he was. But I said to him, I said, buddy, like, they wouldn't call the day off today. Like, not that we're in a bass boat, but I'm like, you have to learn to, if you want to fish competitively, which I'm not sure where I'll go with that, but hey, like, you got to fish in some really awful weather, and this is not that bad. Like, 2.5 to 3 foot chop with an east wind and a bit of rain. That's not that bad to fish. It sucks fishing, but you're not going to die.
No.
So,
but it is, and I think Jim's on here now, and he's probably going to get angry with me saying, but the persona that bass anglers carry is that they're fair weather fishermen.
Yeah.
And that's just not the case.
No.
Absolutely. If you want to be productive and good at it, you're going to have to maintain a high level of production in no matter what weather conditions you experience. And one thing about walleye, sometimes the nastier the weather, the better it is.
100%. And, and I think even for just recreational anglers that go out in different conditions. Like, I think that fishing, you need to learn how to produce fish under different conditions best you can, and spend the time fishing in adverse weather. Like, don't go risking yourself and your equipment, but fish in adverse conditions and keep track of, which direction the wind was blowing, and do those kinds of make notes yourself. Like, I make notes myself. And so, because you know what, you might go out, and it's kind of like my work. I might go out to a site and catch 0 fish. That's still a data point. That's still important information, even though it's a 0. The next site I could catch 100 fish, right? So fishing is just like that. I think it's important for anglers to become good at different conditions, because you don't get to pick what days you fish sometimes. Like, when you're a weekend warrior, like the vast majority of us, even myself included, I need to fish, and I need to get out, and I'm going to go. Now, for me, it's not always about weather, because when you're like a multi-species addict like me, I just switch it up, like, okay, I'm not going on Lake Erie this weekend. I'm going to go river smallie fishing in August, right? Or I'm going to go, maybe I'll go catch some channel cats on a beach in Lake Erie, because it's shore fishing. I don't care how rough it is. Stuff like that. I think those are important attributes as anglers. If you want to stay busy angling, either learn to fish in different conditions or learn to fish for different species. I think that's a great way to be. Absolutely.
And great advice, because at the end of the day, there's always fish somewhere that are biting. You just got to find them, and hopefully, we don't want you to fish in unsafe waters, but you certainly got to test yourself. You do have to test yourself, and sometimes I know I've surprised myself. I never thought in a million years I would have had this kind of day, and I just proved to myself that if you do weather the storm and suck it up, good things happen.
Yeah, and be careful out there. I have an app on my phone, the Lightning app, and it sends me notifications when there's lightning strikes. And I've got a lot of use out of it this year, man. There's been a lot of lightning, even in Ontario. We haven't had the forest fires, but we've had a lot of thunderstorms. So for anglers out there, really listen to your weather updates. I don't know about you, but when that tornado was going through Barrie, I was getting lots of updates. And I heard people in Barrie, it saved their life. They were headed back to that development, and they were interviewed on the news, and they're like, we just stopped. We got notification on our phone, tornado warning. We stopped, because a lot of the warnings go by postal code, right? So if you get a tornado warning it may not mean your house will get hit by a tornado, but what it means is you better stop and look around. Like, I think that's the message, and be ready to take shelter. And, so, and I don't know, my weather apps have been dinging like church bells the past 2 weeks, right?
Absolutely.
So,
yeah. And if there's any advice I can give folks that are tuning in from Ontario, primarily Southern Ontario, Central Ontario, we're in for another round again tomorrow, apparently, what they're saying. So eyes in the sky and make sure everybody stays safe. When it comes to weather apps, I would say namely wind apps. What's your go-to wind app?
So there's the one I use is Windy, and I'm going to give you a tip. And for the ones listening, I can't paste handy things into my. I'm usually at home with 2 monitors, and I'm being all cool. Right now, I have an iPhone, and I'm leaning on some makeshift couch here in the lobby. So, if you go into Windy, you can actually select different models. Okay, so there's different wind models for the Great Lakes region, which is what I'm using. There's 2 models that I primarily use, and I forget what the acronyms are, but just hear me out. The one is called the GFS model. What the GFS model does is it gives you wind forecast out several days. Okay, the GFS model is not the most accurate, but it goes out for several days. Now, if you're going fishing in the next few hours or the next day, use the NAM model, NAM. The NAM model gives you data that's like real time. So if you try to scroll through the NAM model, it stops after like 18 hours. It doesn't go beyond. But that's the best model for. So Scotty, let's say we are going up to Horwood, and we look at Windy, and it says the GFS model is kind of hit and miss. This looks like some good days and some not so good days. But the morning of the fishing trip, I'm going to look at the NAM model, because that's going to give me my real time, or my more accurate. It's based on, the GFS model is based on a large geographic area, and the NAM model is more localized, and it dials that model in. It's still a model, it's a prediction, but those predictions are better in the NAM model when it's like the next day. So awesome. Nice. I use Windy all the time.
Yeah, and a lot of folks do. I know there's another one that's just come up that's fairly popular, or it's growing in popularity, and I can't think of it. My buddy Daryl that took me out on Lake Ontario this past week introduced me to it.
Is it Wind Alert?
It might be Wind Alert. It's definitely got wind in the title.
And they all use the same models. So learn to like toggle on and off the different models in those apps, because when you do that, that allows you to dial in your fishing, like really, really dial it in. Alicia says Instant Weather. Instant Weather is a great app, and they do those live feeds during weather events. I forget the guys who do it, but they do a great job. Their app is pretty good too, to be honest. I'm still a Weather Network guy, kind of for my everyday what's happening in weather. But then even the day of, man, the only weather I want to see is the radar. I don't care what the percent rain is. I'm looking where I am, and is the rain. I'm a radar guy. I will look at 3 or 4 different radars. But
Jay, I'm surprised at how many people can't read a radar.
Oh, I know.
I've shown people, they say, well, how do you know, Scotty? I'm like, well, this is the radar. Look, all that colorful stuff, that's where the rain is falling. Where it's green, not so hard. But where you see the red, oranges, and yellows, that's where the heavy stuff is, and we got to be cautious of that. Well, thanks for showing me. I had no idea how to read a radar.
I'll give you a story, and I don't want to embarrass my wife, but I think it's a story that's worth telling. Okay, last summer, I was working up in where the heck was I? Bayfield, near Bayfield. Okay, on Lake Huron. Big storm cell comes through. We were down in the valley, covered in trees. So, but I got weather alerts on my phone. So we bailed out because we got lightning alerts. We bailed out, climbed up out of the valley, and once you're up on the top of the hill, you can see everything, right? So, anyways, we could see this huge storm cell to the south of us. So we stopped working though, because we have this rule for work: if you have thunder and lightning, you got to wait 20 minutes before you can start again. So you wait 20 minutes, you wait 20 minutes, you wait 20 minutes. It kind of sounds like we're just screwing the pooch, pardon my French, but yeah, that's the rule, okay? And then eventually you're like, we just have to go back to the hotel. That same storm cell headed right across, like from Bayfield, right across towards London and headed down towards Norfolk. Heather was at the beach that day in Turkey Point with her parents and the kids. She didn't check the radar. She looked at the forecast. It was like 40% chance of rain. And then that storm cell comes and it literally cut her off. So she couldn't leave Turkey Point because she was headed right into the line of fire. And this was like, if you know radar, Scotty, it was purple at the center, okay? Which is chance of tornadic activity. I called Brad Thompson, who owns or manages the marina at Turkey Point, and I said, Brad, I need to send my wife and the kids and her parents over to your place because I know they have a block shell for their store. And Heather and the kids went over there and took shelter at the Turkey Point Marina. And while they were driving there, like they were driving across people's front yards because trees were coming down. Like it wasn't a tornado, ended up just being like localized high winds, but it doesn't matter. It can switch to something worse like that. Yeah. You just, bad weather like that can change in an instant. It can get from really bad to worse. And it's because Heather really wasn't checking the radar. She was mostly just looking at that, 40%, 50% chance of rain, right?
Yeah.
So it's a good lesson. I'm not trying to embarrass Heather. She'll probably shoot me for telling this story.
No.
But I think it's a valuable lesson for people
Absolutely.
who are out, learn to, and what's hard though too is when you're out and about fishing, sometimes your cell coverage is terrible. So if you're going to be out on the bigger lakes, carry a VHF radio and listen to the marine forecast. I know some parts of Long Point, you can't get a cell signal. And so good luck checking radar. So, and heck, man, with toys now, Scotty, you want to check radar on your Lowrance unit or your Humminbird, they got tools for that now if you want to do that. But yeah, like learn to read radar. It is so important the day of, especially for storms. Yeah. And for me, I'm responsible for myself and for our staff. And if I'm going to do tomorrow, I'm going to 12-kilometer canoe trip. There's no shelter when I get halfway down there. I can't go back. I have to get to the other end. And we've been in those situations, parked under a bridge trying to seek shelter, or they say not to sit under a tree, but I'll go up in the woods instead of sitting in a canoe, right? Like, but I'm not going to put myself in that situation. If the radar looks bad in the morning, we don't go. So we make it work.
It's true. And if you don't have the opportunity to listen to weather reports, absolutely, Alicia, eyes to the sky. But so many great stories people are sharing here. David absolutely had to hit Huntsville last week. Well, I'll tell you, they got hit pretty hard too. What I'm amazed at too, and I know this isn't speaking to all of our CFNers, but here in Ontario, and for those who are on that are from Ontario, what I'm really surprised at this year, Jay, is the way the storms are moving. Usually they always move from west to east, right?
Yeah.
Or northwest to southeast. That's typically how we see them. These things are wrapping back around Lake Ontario, and they're coming from the east to the west. I've never seen anything like that.
Well, what's happening is some of the jet stream is getting these major pressure systems on the coast, and it's pushing these things back inland. So if you look at some of the I love meteorology, man. You've gotten me into one of my and that's why maybe I'm buddies with some of the meteorologists on Twitter because I love this stuff. So some of these fronts that we're getting are just circling around us because you get these. Sometimes it's high pressure or low pressure systems, but typically when we're under rain, we're under a low pressure system, and you get these high pressure systems going up the coast or up the center of the province. Like when they were getting the heat waves out west, we were getting rain, right? Yeah. Because and the rain was getting circled around because of these two high pressure systems like squeezing us, right? And that's what's been happening in these. We don't want to get into talk about climate change and stuff right now, but I'm telling you, we're going to see more of this, crazy weather.
Yep.
Crazy weather. We have not had a stable day. Well, I'm praying. So we're going to get back to fishing. We're going to the cottage this week. End of the week, we're going for 12 days. And I'm just praying for stable weather. I don't care if it's cold. I don't care if I don't even care if it rains, fine. Rain for 3 days. I'll fish in the rain for 3 days, but don't keep changing on me. I want one or the other. I want sun or rain. I don't want rain one day, sun the next. That's probably what we'll get the way it's been going, but we'll make it work. But
but you're so right. You look at the weather forecast anywhere in Ontario right now, and I can't speak for across Canada, but I'm sure it's just as bad. It's all over the map. Like 30 degrees tomorrow, 21 on Wednesday. You know, rain this day. Yeah, you're 100% right. Like normally when you have a heat wave, it lasts 4 or 5 days.
Yeah.
You get into some bad, colder weather. You'll have that for 2 or 3 days. So there's a certain sense, as you said, stability. But
dude,
not this year.
By this time, my lawn was dead.
Yeah.
I told Trevor, like this year, I said, well, by mid-July, you won't make any more grass cutting money if it's like last summer because everyone's lawn died by mid-July. I'm not even joking. Yeah. Dude, I cut my grandmother's lawn yesterday because Trevor was on vacation. So so the boss had to fill in, when the staff were away, I got to cut grass. And dude, my grandmother's lawn was, it was thick, man. I had to raise the blades a little bit, and I'm going to try and cut it once more before we go on vacation. Like I've never had to cut grass this much in years with so much rain.
Yeah, no, 100% right.
There's no bigger pain in the ass for an angler than cutting grass. Nothing you hate more than cutting grass when you should be fishing, right?
Amen. But as I said, to bring it back to fishing, a lot of folks like yourself, other people it's been a hit or miss year. Like I know Steve Shaw, who's with us tonight, had a fantastic day out on Lake O, fishing for salmon. I was out last Thursday. We marked fish, but we didn't catch any. And luckily, as you said, with the VHF radio, as soon as they brought out the small craft warning, it was no more than an hour after that. The swells were like 3 feet, and it was time to head in. So VHF radio, great suggestion.
Yeah, and you know what? And they're cheap, man. Like you can buy a waterproof floating VHF radio that will last you. Dude, I have some at work that they're not waterproof. They're not floating. And we just keep them in a waterproof case. And dude, they got to be 20 years old. Like usually what happens with them, I lose the stupid charger for them. Like eventually I lose the charger, you know what I'm talking about. But we use them. And in fact, the number one way we use them is when we're working out setting, like, let's say we're setting fike nets and stuff, and trap nets, we use them to talk to each other. We just go to one of the community channels and we talk to each other. Now, even a handheld 5-watt VHF radio, which doesn't have a lot of range, okay? But it will give, most boats with a proper VHF radio will be like, I think it's 20 or 25 watt, which will cover like a good chunk of the lake where you are. The 5-watt handheld does not have a good range, but it does two things. One, it gives you weather updates. And two, Coast Guard can always hear you. They will always hear you. And so if you're out on the lake, have that little 5-watt VHF with you. Like if you're fishing big water, keep it in your dash, keep it charged. And if you need it, you can call Mayday, and there's even ones now that are digital that send a GPS coordinate by pressing a button. I forget what technology, that's very recent, but it goes to their computer at Coast Guard and they can pinpoint you immediately, right? It's incredible. And I tell people too, kayak anglers, if you're going to be fishing Lake Ontario in the spring, like we've seen a few tragedies over the last few years, especially in cold water seasons, take a handheld VHF radio with you. The Coast Guard will always hear you. It's such an important tool to have. I highly recommend.
It's not mandatory yet, but I do see it becoming mandatory in the future.
And to use it, you're supposed to have a VHF. And what I recommend to people, take it now because they aren't recertifying that. Like, when they start to recertify stuff, Scotty, we've talked about this. That's a whole other. Go take your VHF operator certificate now. Go get it. It's good for life. Mine's good for life. I have a little pouch. I carry all my licenses in there, and I have my VHF operators. Will I ever get checked? Probably not, but I have that operator certificate in there. And you don't have to be a genius to work a VHF radio, but they do want you to have an operator certificate to operate it. And it's a useful course because the instructors are so knowledgeable. You can ask them questions about, usually they're retired Coast Guard guys and girls. And what better group to talk about is if you're going to be fishing big water or want to start fishing big water, take those kinds of courses. Really important courses to take, I think, anyways. Good peace of mind.
Absolutely. Jay, just before we let you go, any last words, message that you wanted to talk about or touch on?
No, you know what? Headed to the cottage on Friday. My buddy who owns the cottage, we're going to Barry's Bay. Jimmy talked about the Petawawa qualifier this weekend. I'm not in it, even though it's only an hour from where the cottage where we're staying. I just think it's a good time just to spend time with family right now. And so we're going to go to the cottage. My buddy who owns the cottage, it's a private cottage. He doesn't rent out to everybody. He rents it out to me a week a year. He's got a brand new smoker craft. I think it's an 18-foot with a 90 on it. He's got it all fueled up for me, ready to go. We're going to do some videos next week. I want to do some videos of Mike's new smoker craft up there. He's a smoker craft sales rep. I'm not going to, he's a smoker craft guy. But he treats us really well. And so we're going up there to the cottage, dude, and we're going to fish it was only going to be Friday to Friday, but he messaged me last week. He said, I'm not going up the long weekend. You want it till Monday? I'm like, yes, I do. Yes, I want the cottage until Monday. So yeah, dude. So what I do on the weekend, I rewired Trevor's kayak trailer because I wasn't happy with the wiring because I'm towing the kayak up there. And dude, I don't want a trailer breakdown on the way up. So I'm very picky about that stuff. And I rigged up and spooled up fishing rods for the weekend. So dude, even though I didn't fish last weekend, I was still busy doing fishing stuff. Takes the mind off things, right?
Totally does, dude.
Yeah.
Totally does. And as you did for the last half hour or so, you took our minds off everyday life, and we truly appreciate that. One question here, Curtis is asking, those VHF courses, where would you find them?
You know what? You just have to just type in Ontario and Google Ontario VHF Operator Certificate. Just Google it, Ontario VHF Operator Certificate. There's a few different private companies that offer it. I think you can do them online, but usually they offer like a 1-day in class, and it's worth having. It's worth having. But yeah, VHF Operator Certificate Ontario, and there'll be links for people that can. If I was at home right now on my laptop, I'd have like names that I've hired, because I've all my students. I say my students, our students take those courses, right? So they have to have those courses. But yeah, VHF Operator Certificate, Google that for Ontario, and you'll find suppliers. And there's several, especially in the Greater Toronto Golden Horseshoe area. Lots. Oh, yeah. Last thing, Scotty, before I go, big shout out. I actually, Scotty, there's people out there who listen to the show who surprise me to listen to it. Golden Horseshoe Outdoors Club, they're in Hamilton. I've been to their meeting several times. Harvey's the president. He does. They're huge with the Hamilton Harbor Kids Fishing Derby, especially. He just wanted to mention. He says, Jay, it's so important to give shout outs to clubs. He goes, would you give my club a shout out? And I said, absolutely. So Golden Horseshoe Outdoors Club. If you're in the Hamilton area and you want to get involved with a great grassroots outdoors and very fishing based club, Golden Horseshoe Outdoors Club. Look them up. They're a great organization, and they're real old school. And then there's also the Stelco Fishing Club, which is another one. And those two clubs hook up all the time and do great things. And let's hope in 2022 we can get back to the Hamilton Harbor Kids Fishing Derby, which is where Trevor caught his first fish at 18 months old. So that
nice.
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. Well said, Jay. And as Alicia said, we're gonna miss you next week. But it's a much needed vacation for you and the family. You fished very hard during the fish off, and unfortunately had to deal with the more downside of life recently.
Dude,
so much.
Hey, dude, we got 9th place, and we tied for 9th, but I know the tiebreaker is most species, so I know we actually cleanly finished in 9th. I read the tiebreaker rules, so we're good.
Right,
we're happy with 9th, but thanks everyone for tuning in. Follow me on Instagram. We'll be posting all kinds of stories next week while we're fishing. Thanks, everybody.
Right on, Jay. You take care of yourself, bud. Enjoy.
See you guys.
All the best. Always a class act, full of information, and loves doing this for our CFN community, and we can't thank him enough for it, as well as all of our guests, who I want to thank right from the outset. Of course, our guest host, YVONNE, did a fantastic job introducing all the things we need to know about Lyme disease and the removal of ticks, from Ellen and Angela from Lyme Ontario, of course, Big Jim, Lawrence, and just recently Jay. Thanks, everybody, for joining us. Thanks for your participation, your engagement, and just being you. We'll see you tomorrow for Turkey Tuesday, Mike and I, and then Thursday we're going to be cooking with Cameron Tate, and it's going to be some Vietnamese walleye summer rolls. Can't wait. You take care. We'll see you tomorrow. All the best. Take care. Peace.